and healthy, doing the things that you love. We're back. Second stream in 2 days at the Spurs Talk Show. We never raised the ball. Yesterday's the discussion about all things going on with Tottenham. Today, this evening, a crank exercise. Let's figure out whether or not Tottenham are overachieving, underachieving, relative to the strength of our squad. What does the Premier League look like? Where are the threats coming from? Is there going to be some regressions to the mean in the second half of the season? Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be back with you. Let me start by saying, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you're getting involved in the conversation on the side, in the comments, in the chat. We need your help. Jack Kanicki and I are here to bring to you this stream this evening. And ladies and gentlemen, the Spurs Talk Show, it starts right now. Lovely touch from him though. Harry Kane, Lucas Moura, can you do something, please? Last chance, Matt Doherty! Oh, you shite! There could be from the dead to the don't fuck it up now, don't fuck it up. Go and win it! Let's go for chance! Stephen Bergwijn! Stephen Bergwijn's through! Win it, Stephen! Come on! Yes! He's won it! He's gonna win it! Oh my God! Oh my God! We did it! Oh, can never get that out the way in time. I can never get it out the way in time. Damn it. I thought it was going to be seamless. I'm still rusty. How's everybody doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean Butler. Bugsy's having a nap. I'd like her to be in here, but she's unpredictable in live stream environments, so she's not here. But I am joined today, guys, by a really great mate of mine, one of the duo from the Irish Hotspur. You know him as Flat Cap Euro Talk. He's the man to bring us the knowledge, the insights on all the different ramifications of what makes up squad strength as we go through the entire Premier League and try to figure out, as I said earlier, where Tottenham really sit and how good of a job are we doing, or maybe not so, with Antonio Conte at the helm this season. We're going to figure that out right now. Let me bring him into the show. Please welcome Mr. Jack Kanicki. How you doing,
Johnny?
Bro?
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to finding out how bad our squad is, and also maybe at the same time how it maybe is also outperforming. You know, we might also surprise ourselves. Looking forward to this. And I asked you in the back end, you know, what we're trying to achieve today, and that always feels good with a stream. You know, we're trying to get something done. You know, we're being productive today.
Well, listen, this is the thing I've wanted to do for a long time, because I hear loads and loads and loads of people in the community, you know, that come from a variety of different angles, essentially have their various opinions on whether our squad is woeful, or at least parts of it are relegation candidates, you know, and you've got bits of like world class in some areas and bits of working class in others. And it's difficult to really kind of put your finger on it. And also, you know, there's people that think that Conte could be getting better from the squad than he is. And some people think that he's last season, he overperformed massively. So I'm kind of interested to see how how we feel about it when we look into each of the different squads. And we're not going to spend, as much time in the bottom half or in the relegation thing, because we're not super interested in figuring out whether Everton deserve to be where they are. But when we get to like the mid-tables, the likes of Fulham, Brentford, obviously Liverpool, Chelsea, Newcastle, it's more interesting, I think, to go through that with a bit more depth to see, where are the threats for the second half of the season, and are there opportunities for us to close the gap if there are teams that are overperforming, and with a couple of injuries, maybe they can get themselves into some trouble. Does that sound okay, mate?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed we can't focus on Fat Frank and maybe his failings, but of course we have bigger things at hand today. Another thing too is like I feel like like you said, right, there may be some things that perhaps are a bit confusing when it comes to Antonio Conte, like you just mentioned, right? He got the best out of Dyer and Davies, in fact, resurrected their careers, in my belief, sort of
Yeah.
last season, and sort of made them look like entirely different defenders. And then this season, they're all of a sudden like, shadows of that form. And so that's kind of what we're trying to get to the bottom of. So I like how you put that.
100%, mate. Yeah. And look, we can spend a little bit of time having a dig at Fat Frank if we want to. Well, I don't feel comfortable calling him Fat Frank given my.
Can't make too many enemies with Everton after we hijacked the deal as well. We hijacked the deal. So
before we get going, I do want to get your thoughts on Danjuma and obviously the close to here we go with Pedro Porro, and also the links towards Skriniar that seem to be growing in numbers. And I'm also hearing from a couple of people that I think are kind of reliable to some degree, saying that there's maybe a couple of other centre-backs that we're looking at. I'm hearing a little bit about Hinkipie might be getting done. Indika might also be something. And all these players are out of contract. So we will, whether or not they're going to be done now or pre-contract arrangements for the summer, I want to hear your thoughts on how big of a priority it is. And should we be happy if we don't get them for January for the second half of the season, but if we can sign one of these worldies or future worldies, but have to wait until the summer. I do want to get your thoughts on that, mate, but let me just say hello to the guys in the chat. We've got Jack straight up, first of all, saying hello. So Marco Silva will always have a seat at my table for getting the best out of Big Mitch.
Oh, it's a beautiful sight to see Big Itch, the Big Mitro, having a good season, and destroyed Ivan Toney's record or whatever it was too last season. So he's getting the best out of an itch, which, like I said, Sean gets a seat at my table.
He scratches the itch for sure. And by the way, we are going to include managers in this analysis because obviously they're a part of the squad and they're pivotal and key to getting the best out of whatever squad they have, or maybe they're not. So we're going to keep those in mind as well. Dermatron, back in the game. How you doing, Dermatron? Thank you very much, my man. I'm pretty sure you've been a member before, so I think you must have just rejoined. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that, buddy. It's very nice of you. Always I'm not sure if you're a... What would you be?
He's a pony, it says.
He's a pony. Now I've got to give you the welcome pony noise then. Where is it? Here we go. Welcome to the Spurs Talk Show, Ponies, Dermatron. Really appreciate it. Who else we got in the chat? We got Derek Smith. He's saying he's more of a donkey.
You need to have that. You need to have a donkey membership for sure. I would have to a downgrade or upgrade, Sean. Is it a downgrade or an upgrade? Because a donkey can be quite useful.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, 100% it can. I'm not sure. We'll figure it out. Maybe that's a third tier. We've got Paul Longworth in the house as well. What's happening, Paul? Good to see you, my man. Moon Doggy Dog is in the house and the super chat early doors. Thank you so much, buddy. Really appreciate that. It means the world to have your support.
Big up, Moon.
We have Side Dancers in the house. What's happening, Side? Good to see you, my man, as well. Colin is here. Big up, Cole. I hope you're doing okay, my man. Carl Simpson is here as well, as is Lukey164 Spur. Catman Jess is in the building. What's happening, Catman Jess? Good to see you. Niall Wood is here as well. Good evening, my friend. Ellie, the queen of my belly, is also here. How are you, Ellie? Well, Shawnee. Are you stream happy? We think so. Yeah. I'm getting them all out of the way. I'm trying to catch up because I owe so much content over the last 2 months. Might start doing 3 streams a day just to annoy everybody.
Make up for the last time. Exactly.
Yeah, right. 100%. Clement's in the house. Big up to everybody. What's happening, Clement? Peter Simmons is here as well. Where's this Skriniar stuff coming from? Anything to it? Well, there's lots of noise from supposed ITKs and that sort of saying that Tottenham Tottenham and Liverpool are fighting it out and that PSG are another option, but they're not prioritizing him at this stage. So there's very few other clubs that are being linked, and it makes the most sense for me for Tottenham.
I just think with this one, Sean, it's just been screaming out that he's going to PSG, and like he's from the very beginning been linked with them. It looked like PSG kind of knew that they could sign him on a free contract, so they're not willing to sort of go through the motions with Inter. They're just letting him kind of wait out the rest of his contract. And since he only has 6 months left, like you could throw 30 million bids at Inter Milan, like, but Skriniar just looks like he might not want to go to anybody. He wants
Just
to
turn
go
it
to
down.
PSG.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that makes sense.
Which
It
can
does
be the
make
case.
sense.
Sometimes we forget about that sort of thing. Like he's got
Of
his heart
course.
set on a certain club, and he's going there.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about replacements for him then instead in a second. Let's get through United Spurs. Jacob's in the house. What's happening, Jacob? Good to see you, my man. Roy Vikings in the house. I think Roy is also a new member. I'm pretty sure I saw it yesterday after the stream. I think you might have joined, or at least recently. Welcome to the team, my man. I'm not entirely sure if you're a pony or a puppy off the top of my head, but big up to see it in the chat, my man. Mojo Matsey's here as well. What's happening? Likes that late reaction from Jack.
it's
late reaction?
Vintage. It's now vintage, honestly. It really is. You got to preserve it and put it in the Hall of Fame of late reactions to a goal. It really is.
Oh,
it's the quintessential. It's like
that one.
creme de la creme of late reactions. It really is.
Yeah, unfortunately, like you were on a delay, weren't you? You were I think you were on like a 40-second delay, so you were listening to Dave and I in real time.
If there's like a watch along museum, you would have to put that one in there, like somewhere. Just that clip, absolutely.
Listen, I am going to be updating it once I get some new footage that is quite as impactful. I'm going to be replacing it.
But it needs to be preserved, Sean. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Kept somewhere safe for the world to still see.
Lisa's in the house as well. Good evening, Lisa. I hope everything is good for you over in Mexico. Philo's in the house as well. What's happening, Phil? Good to see you, my man. He says if we manage to get Porro and someone like a Skriniar, even if not him, then that could give us the boost we need in the second half of the season. FA Cup and a top four for me. Yeah, look, the FA Cup, I mean, look, we've got a massive game against Preston on Saturday. And then if we get through that, I think for me, it's all a little bit down to the draw, right? We've got such horrible form against the top four, top five. Mm-hmm. If we can avoid one of those teams until the final or the semi-final, then you've got a chance. But if you get if you get one of those guys in the fifth round, then suddenly
it's on our way though so far with all the other teams kind of knocking each other out at this moment in time. Like we've had it quite easy in the FA Cup, so you kind of do want to throw a lot of eggs into that basket. That's what I would say. Just because when you do get the benefit of a bunch of other teams meeting each other quite early, it is an added benefit. I think we only probably will likely play like one or two top six teams or even Premier League teams like in our route to the final. Like we could be matched up with another championship side or something.
Yeah. There's only 9. I think there's only 9 Premier League teams left, isn't there?
Yeah, like they've been knocked out early. They got like in the first couple of rounds, they really were, or the last round, they were really like so many Premier League teams were matched up with each other.
It could be our year. It could be a weird one. Everything's falling right for Arsenal right now. In terms of their lack of injuries and how everyone else is falling apart. It could be their year to win the Premier League, and maybe it won't feel quite as bad if Tottenham get a juicy route all the way through to the final and then somehow, pull a rabbit out of the bag or out of the hat in the last.
Let's hope so.
Paul Longford's in the house. What's happening, Paul? Steve Webb is also here. He's saying, looking forward to a sensational Spurs talk show. I hope I can provide that for you, my man. Let's see. Derek Hutchinson's also here. So is John Stokes. What's happening, guys? Jace is in the house. 100 million for United for Harry Kane. He deserves to win stuff. Is that a new rumor today that they're going to bid 100 million quid for him? I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen anything about that, but maybe that's the price that Jace has put on Harry Kane's head, or maybe that's the one that supposedly is going around, that if Harry Kane were to go, maybe that would be the number they would put about, and then it's just like, who wants him? Come get him kind of situation.
Yeah.
Then I think Man United would be, if I had to pick any of the clubs for him to go to in the Premier League, I think I'd be maybe grimaced enough or grimace least by Man.
I don't know. I don't see the benefit. I don't think going to Manchester United doesn't guarantee you a trophy by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. Maybe Manchester City is incredibly likely, but United might be on a rebuild and ahead of schedule.
Go to City if they want to. Yeah, just go to City. Have Haaland and Kane up top.
There's very few options, right? He's not going to go to Arsenal or Chelsea because that would just destroy his legacy at Tottenham. And so if he wants to stay in the Premier League and beat the Premier League record, but not with Tottenham, he has to pick a team that makes sense. That's going to guarantees a trophy.
Yeah.
And it's not Newcastle. It's not Man United. I don't think either of those two guarantee a trophy. So it's only City. And unless Haaland decides he wants to leave and go on to Real Madrid, then I don't know.
Or Holland's willing to make a little room for like 1 or 2 seasons, and that'd be amazing if you could do like some sort of fashion of a 4-4-2 with those two up top. Like that would just be
Can you imagine
ridiculous.
the resurgence, the re-emergence of the
school,
old
but
classic
also new
4-4-2
school at the same time. It's like old school, new school, all blend into one. Beautiful.
Wowzers. Wayne Bonner's in the house. Afternoon all. Hope everyone's well. Looking forward to this one. Could be fun. Yeah, sure. I hope so too, mate. Hope so too. Paddy Hartner's here. Hi, Paddy. How you doing?
See you, Paddy.
2 in 1. More to come, hopefully. Up the Levy lovers. It's interesting. I don't want to say anything, but it's interesting how people are reacting to the Porro news on Twitter and the Danjuma news. Like people that have certain belief systems or narratives, like they're receiving it one way and other people are receiving it another way. It's all very it's interesting reading it. That's much as I'll say. Dan Sandoval's in the house. What's happening, Danny? Cooper is in the house as well. What's happening, Coop? Good to see you, my man. Carl Higgins is here. World class, not
Carl.
working class. Is there something wrong with the working class, Sean? No, not at all. I was just trying to ad lib something coming out off my tongue about you know what I'm saying. It wasn't like that. Not like that at all. Tom Hillier's in the house. Big up, guys. Keeping me company on the world's largest car park, the beautiful M25. Well, I hope you're not in too much traffic, my man. Ellie's in the house. We said hello to Ellie. Mark Fiore's in the house. Give me back my son. What son? Your sonny? Should win son? Not sure. Rob Belcher's here. What's happening, Rob? Good to see you, my man. Eddie Ryan's also in the house, as is Shem Tam. And Mia's in the house. What's happening, Mia? Good to see you. Aqua and Field Sports is here. Kev G back as well. Who else haven't I said hello to? I think that's everybody. I know Alex is in the house, as is
Just a sec.
Eugene.
Let me turn down the radiator.
No worries, mate. No worries. Guys, please do me a favor. There's 120 of you in the house. Please smash the like button for me if you haven't already, on your way in or on your way out. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And join the conversation. So what we're going to do? Oh, actually, sorry. Before we do that, I promised Jack I wanted to hear your opinion on Danjuma and on Pedro Porro. We haven't got to spend too long talking about it, but just what are your thoughts on Danjuma? I know you've done a video on him. Do you think he's someone that's going to come in and add something different, or is he a bit underwhelming for you?
It's kind of two ways of looking at it. I think you have to caveat it with the fact that we did have the opportunity to get Leandro Trossard, and Leandro Trossard for me could have been an interesting option. We seen him score against us. He brings a lot of creativity. I think he's very different to Sonny too, Trossard, so that would have been nice. And it was an opportunistic signing. Like, it wasn't like he was going to be an expensive one. He was available on the cheap, and Spurs haggled over it and got swooped up by Arsenal in that case. But this time he got a little payback and did a similar thing to Everton in this sort of scenario. I think what I do like about Danjuma, Sean, is that it seems like Spurs do sort of operate in the kind of like, they like to get a little sampler, they like to get a little taster kind of a player before they really commit to it. And yes and no, like, it's frustrating, but it is sort of, I think, how the game is going towards these sort of loan option to buys and things like that, because then you have to guarantee that the player comes in and is actually playing for you and actually ends up working out under the manager you have. And then you can see if you actually feel like he's worth buying afterwards. So you get a little sampler of him. What I think is what Danjuma could bring to Spurs is a bit more of trickery. And also he actually will bring kind of what Sonny brings, but Sonny hasn't been able to sort of deliver this season. He dribbles out players really quick. He's very kind of like, I think he's like 5'10", 5'11", so he's not exactly short or anything. So he comes at you with a bit of pace, and he can come at you very direct. Like I said, he's very kind of sort of technical, so he can get you with a few different kind of, sort of fancy as well as kind of flair type ways of, skinning past his man. And as well, he come off a really good season last season, Sean, like a good sort of debut season for Villarreal, and played a huge part in their Champions League run. He had 6 goals and 2 assists. They made it to the semifinals. So if you got 6 goals and 2 assists for a team like Villarreal, who are huge underdogs, that means you probably played like a pretty big part in sort of their run and sort of that like campaign of getting as far as they did. And so we're kind of looking at a guy who can play as a left winger, play as a second striker. These are kind of positions that Sonny takes up, but maybe the big thing is that Sonny just hasn't been delivering this season, Sean. And so we've had to look at who can we bring on, who can we bring in that can challenge Sonny, but also be that alternative in case Sonny's form kind of just continues to plateau in the way that it is. And I feel
on
like
that,
Danjuma,
do you think that the like there's a lot of people, myself included, that I criticize Conte for what I believe to be stubborn entrenchment in his lack of willingness to make changes, early enough, and also his continued trust and faith in players, because this argument that you can't drop Sonny against whatever team because he usually plays really well against them. I think that argument has to stop. Now, I was angry when I saw he was starting against Fulham, but I didn't know at the time that, of course, Rishi wasn't fully fit, and Brian Hill. I did know Brian Hill wasn't fit, so obviously I'll excuse any of those things where options are limited, right? If there's no options, then of course you have to play them. There is the option that you could, of course, still go to a Kane and Decky front two. But my expansive point is more, if there is any part of Conte that has this loyalty towards Sonny, or that he is afraid of what it might do to Sonny's temperament or confidence if he does get dropped, even though the one time that we've seen it happen this season against Leicester as an experiment, it couldn't have been a better outcome, which for me is frustrating. Why, you've tried something, it's resulted in a hat-trick for Sonny to prove a point. And then from that game on, he's back in the first team. His form didn't kick back into gear. And albeit I know there's been injuries and lack of options at times, but there has been moments where there's been options and he hasn't taken them. Yeah. Do you think that Danjuma is going to come in, and if you agree with me that Conte has this faith in Sonny that I think sometimes is a little bit too far,
come back to bite him?
Do you think that Danjuma is going to get chances where Richarlison or Brian Hill haven't?
I'd like to think so, because a left wing kind of in this 3-4-3, that would be his position. Like, you would just plot him in right there, and you could see him bringing something like very similar to Sonny, but he might come in and have an opportunity, let's say against Preston, to sort of impress. Another thing too for me is that Lucas Moura, we often forget, has been missing and extinct basically this whole entire season, which is also part of the reason, Sean, like when we look at the bench in certain games, like we're like, geez, there's nothing there like to work with. There's nothing to bring on. That's because not only have we not had Kulusevski or Richarlison for the majority of the season, but we also haven't had Lucas Moura. So that's 3 attackers. And like, we look at Chelsea, Liverpool, those sort of teams are complaining all the time about missing 3 attackers, and people are giving them excuses all the time. But it doesn't feel that way with Spurs, Sean, this season, that there's been that sort of excuse given, not given to Conte, just more given to the squad. Like, I think in general, like if you're without 3 attackers and you basically have nothing you can bring on off the bench, like that is a difficult thing to find yourself with. Like, you kind of have to get it right the first time, maybe with your plan A.
But we've also had those situations
for lack of that plan B. But if you have no Lucas Moura, that's, it's just been, this is a Lucas Moura replacement, as well as like a Stevie B replacement, as well as like a Sonny challenger competitor. That's how I would put it. It's like a few of those things.
Primarily going to be a squad player to start with, come on off the bench, maybe get some minutes against Preston, but come off the bench more often than not. Or do you think he actually would, if Sonny continues to, in a world where hopefully Richarlison's injury days are behind him, I don't know what Brian Hill's situation is currently, but in a world where you do have those 2-3 options on the bench now, do you see Danjuma starting ahead of Sonny based on form? If Sonny continues to dip and dive, and as Danjuma comes on and maybe scores a couple, Dreamworld, he scores a goal against Preston or something, do you think then against Leicester you might see Danjuma in front of Sonny, or are we sort of running before we're walking a little bit with him?
I don't think that's running before walking. I think that's more questioning or trying to get behind Conte's psyche with how he, with players, taking their debuts well and that sort of thing. I think it's more of a question of Conte than it is a question of Danjuma. What I would say, though, is Danjuma did score in his debut for Villarreal, and his kind of like his season was like a bit sort of like stop and start, it felt like, but he started strong for Villarreal when he came in. Like, he kind of hit the ground running with them, and he's done that, I believe, at Bournemouth. Like, when they went into the Premier League, he didn't do well, but the moment they got relegated into the Championship, he did quite well. So he just seems to be like a bit of a, sputtery sort of kind of guy, where he kind of goes in like streaks. And you feel like maybe that type of player, if he gets 1 or 2 tricks that pull off for him, he might score against Preston or whatever, and he might get started in the next game, or he'll have, maybe Conte at least thinking about it a little bit differently. And also, what I would say is, at least now, Sean, we have some balance to the squad, where we at least have, even worst case scenario, he's a squad player. at least we have now 2 left wingers that we can confidently, name and pick. We have 2 strikers we can confidently name and pick with Richarlison and Kane, and then we
Yeah.
have 2 right wingers we can confidently pick with Hill
Becky and
and
Hill.
Kulusevski. So now we finally have like the
Bit
balance
of
of
balance.
six
Yeah.
strikers or 6
Yeah.
attackers, which we've never had this whole season. We've never had that balance. So that's the
Yeah.
reason why I like it.
No, I love it. I love it. I wonder what it does for Richarlison's chances if Conte's. And who knows whether this is a Conte signing, a Levy signing, a knee-jerk signing because of what's happened with, missing out on Trossard, all that stuff. But I wonder if Danjuma comes in and starts well on the left-hand side, gets a goal, has a running start, so to speak. You know that Harry Kane isn't really going to be dropped or rotated or rested because he's so pivotal, he's so important. The fact that he played with a fever on Monday night and still did the job. And I just wonder whether or not, what does that do for Richarlison's ability to get minutes if we all think that he's not good enough to play on the left? Maybe with Brian Hill out injured, you might see Richarlison come in and give minutes, take minutes away from Decky, but Decky would be a starter. Does this kind of disrupt Richarlison's ability to get minutes, which would be a shame after on the back of the World Cup that he had, right?
I see that concern. What I would say is I think Richarlison has hurt his own chances of minutes this season. Like there have been plenty of occasions where we could have given Harry Kane a rest, I feel like, or even taken Harry Kane off like at one stage or another and bring on Richarlison to do something different. And this game in particular, Sean, this FA Cup game, I would absolutely start Richarlison in this game. I don't think you should start Harry Kane in this one.
Yeah.
We've already overplayed him. He's already, doing a huge service for us as it is because he's had no understudy or no backup to him. So Kane has had to try to sort of leg it on his own with Richarlison being hurt the whole time. So it's hard for me to really, how would I put this? It's hard for me to be sympathetic to Richarlison's minutes because he's had opportunities this season to get minutes, but he's been injured. And that injury, and of course, it's not his fault that he got injured, but he's been injured. And those minutes have actually been available to him, but he was on the bench and he wasn't available to give Harry Kane a rest. So I think it's actually more just him being available and him, because he hasn't even played that many minutes. So how is he getting injured that much is another thing too, right? Or how is his injuries like that long and sustained? So it's just more for me, keeping him healthy. And by keeping him healthy, when we end up being 4-0 up against Crystal Palace, we can take Harry Kane off and bring Richarlison on. Or it's just, I feel like Richarlison for me is just missed opportunities to get minutes. So that's why I don't even, like the criticism of when they say, oh, we paid this much for a guy who doesn't even have a Premier League goal yet for us. It's the guy's not even been able to play yet because
and when he has played, he's been played out of position.
And he's been played out of position. So I just think I just want Richie to be healthy, and then I'll make a harsher judgment of Richie.
For sure, it's far too early. I mean, I've always been clear. I never really fancied him as a player anyway, but I do think it's too early to judge him. Right, a
lot of people wanted a big name number 9 to bring off the bench anyway, for Harry Kane, because that's how all the other clubs operate. They have some other big name that they leave on the bench, and even if you like Richarlison or not, he sort of fit that bill of a big name that you could throw on kitchen sink time. And if he's happy to do it, he's happy to do it, and he'll challenge the others, as well. But,
okay, well, in about 5 minutes' time, we're going to start going through these squads and figuring out which teams do have the better benches, which teams do have the ability to rotate, or how closely their first 11 can match up to their options off the in the squad. Before we do that, obviously the big news is not only are we close to signing Pedro Porro, from what I've been reading all day, it's essentially a done deal. It's agreed, it's arranged, but it's just not announced yet because Sporting want the opportunity to go and find a replacement over the next couple of days, and they want to kind of keep the announcement under wraps before, which I think is fair enough and reasonable. Obviously, until it's official and signed and sealed, then you always wonder whether Chelsea can come in and do one of their hijackings, like the hijacker becomes the hijacky and all that stuff. Well, let me ask you this, mate. First of all, what are your thoughts on him? I mean, I've got his stats up. His stats look phenomenal going forward on the ball. Yeah. His ability is just insane relative to everybody else who plays in this position across the 5 leagues. Defensively, for me, I think there's a lot of question marks about some of his ability to handle being dribbled at and the successful tackles per 90, etc. So I wonder two things. I want to hear your thoughts on him generally as a player, how exciting, how well he's going to fit into a Conte system, if presuming he's coming. But also, what do you think that means regarding Conte's future? And if that is still up in the air in your mind, if there is that kind of doubt that you think he'll be here next year, do you think that maybe we've got a square peg in a round hole potentially with regard if the next cab off the rank managerially is a Pochettino or anybody else that plays with a 4? Is there any risk, do you think, in Pedro Porro as a right back versus playing in a right wing
The
back? They are
risk
two
of him
different
being that.
positions. Yeah.
The risk of him becoming a square peg in a round hole, because for right now he fits in perfectly, but
Yeah.
potentially, yeah, it's a good fear that you have there. I think initially, right, just for Conte right now, and then I'll get to that part, if we did end up, switching managers. But I think what I would say what Pedro Porro is going to bring, the first thing that comes to mind, Sean, and it's probably going to be a huge relief for a lot of Spurs fans, is finally it seems like we have a guy who can actually put in a decent cross. We have a guy that can be able to cross it from deep. He can cross it from areas that Emerson nor Doherty, I think, this season have been able to. I think but Emerson and Doherty both lack is that ability to cross it from a deeper area, but as well as cross it accurately and intelligently. He has and very intelligent crosses where he clearly is able to pick out the guy that he's looking for. But like I said before, he's also able to do it early and being able to do it from a deep position. So that means you can get those crosses where like Harry Kane is running in behind and all he has to do is just follow his run and Pedro Porro will sort of find him right in the box and he'll find him to tap it in. And that's what I think we've been missing from Doherty and Emerson. They just always seem to miss them, or they always overhit it or underhit it, or
100%.
just simply, or hitting it in blindly and just hoping for the best. I've been there before, Sean. When I'm going down the byline, that's usually my best method of doing it, is just hit it in blindly. And we actually now have a guy. We actually have a guy. He has a guy who can look up early as well, which is
find
important.
The spot.
Find the spot and find his players. And he can do it with like a huge looping, swinging ball in. He can do it with a ball that's played on the floor, played on the carpet as well. I just think that's his major attribute for me, is those crosses, Sean. And I've seen them myself. They are delicious. They're gorgeous, and they're put on a plate. I think Harry Kane's going to love them. The other parts of his game, like his sort of, his dribbling and things like that, I think are standard and are good. Like they're better than Emerson's and Doherty's, that's for sure. But I would say it's just more that creativity from those wide areas, like him being able to find his teammates and being able to set up others. Like he's kind of a striker's dream, I would say, type of wing back. And I think the defensive area we'll get onto later, but that's what I'd say. The first thing is that this crossing.
Key passes, he's in the top 99 percentile. He's probably the best wing back or fullback in all of the top 5 leagues for his key passes per 90. Passes into the penalty area, like you say, crosses into the penalty area. 99th percentile, 97th percentile. Expected assists. Even his completed long passes are in the top 15, 16 percentile. His passing absolutely blows my mind. His ability to create goals and shot creation. Look at this, 99 percentile for goal creating actions. Passes from live balls or dead balls. Like the guy is going to add so much ability and assist us so much going
just
forward.
To further back up what I was saying, just the fact of, the emphasis of the fact that he can cross it from that deep area is also the fact that he actually takes set pieces for them. He takes corners, he takes free kicks for them. He's even taken some penalties for them. So it just shows that he's a good striker of the ball, basically. Like if they have confidence in him taking penalties and taking corners and taking set pieces, that means he's one of the better strikers of the ball in that Sporting team as well.
100%. No, it's a great point. It's a great point. Well made.
Because you wouldn't trust Emerson over a corner. You wouldn't trust Doherty over a corner. That's
maybe we don't need to trust Sonny anymore, right? Like you can have Perisic taken from one side and you can have Porro from the other. Exactly. And look, it's super exciting for me to have the guy with his technique on the ball. Off the ball, however, this is where he falls apart, and this is why I worry a little bit about I don't think it matters so much. Well, there's two things, right? So even if Conte stays and you're playing a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2, can you really afford to have Ivan Perisic at left wing back, who's nothing like the same level of stats, but also better with the ball, better going forward than he is defensively, and Pedro Porro on the right when you have the 3 centre backs that we currently do. Romero, not so much of a problem typically, but then next to him Eric Dyer, and next to them Longley or Ben Davies. For me, I wonder whether our 2 wing backs would be. I don't know if you can necessarily play Porro and Perisic with those 3 centre backs still there, maybe
Mhm.
if you bring in a Skriniar or an Indica or a Hincapie or somebody else, then maybe you can have a bit more wiggle room to play those both offensive options. Or
Mhm.
maybe it's the horses for courses, you pick the game. But when you do look at his defensive actions here, they leave a lot to be desired. And I wonder how you feel about whether or not, would you be comfortable having Perisic and Porro playing at the same time against a good team that break well against against the run of play, for example?
It's the defensive stats here are worrisome, but what I would say is to caveat them or maybe put some bit of context to them is that he does play for a very good sporting team, and so they are going to have more of the ball in these games in the Primera Liga.
Good point.
So that
Good point.
means there's actually fewer chances for him to like win the ball back. Like the majority of the time, he's the one with the ball. And then actually, Sean, if you went to his like Champions League from this season, I think his Champions League numbers showed that he was getting busy because they were put under a lot of pressure and they were coming up against better opponents, you would say, when you looked at some of his like Champions League. You could go to, I think, where is it, it's
Uh,
compare him to 2023 Champions League. It's right next to the one you have with those little
Here we go.
tabs on the bottom.
Yep.
Yeah. And then when you look at his Champions League numbers, I think it's slightly better if I looked at it, and that's because he was a bit busier defensively when I saw it. And
Got it.
if
Yeah.
and then
So the
yeah.
shooting stats come down because he hasn't got as much time on the ball.
Exactly. So all the things that he's good at kind of go down because he has
Oh
fewer
wow.
chances to do it. But then his defensive numbers kind of shoot up when
Oh,
he's in the
what a great
Champions
point.
League.
What a great
Yeah,
point.
and
I hadn't
then
seen that. Okay.
but then like you have to then use the seeing eye test with that comparison, right? Because if you're busy, like even Sean, like if I'm playing at right wing back for Sporting, I'm going to be busy too. Like they're going to be going down my side, all the time as well. But
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
fact that I think there's a few things. The fact that he is getting tackles versus tackles won, so he's like getting a few tackles in there. It doesn't look like he's missing a lot of tackles it doesn't look like he's getting skinned or missing a ton of them by
Yep.
the extent of it. Like he's getting a high percentage there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I would
Wow.
say is when he is busy, he seems to do okay with the one-on-ones. He doesn't seem to be spectacular, but he seems to do okay with the
So
one-on-ones, like at least in
really
the
good
Champions
insight,
League.
mate. Really good
Yeah.
insight. Drilling down into it a little bit against more difficult opposition. Although, who has he played this year? So he's played Frankfurt, Tottenham twice, Frankfurt twice,
And then us, and then Marseille.
and Marseille twice. Okay, which is probably a higher standard than the majority of the Portuguese league. Yeah. Okay.
Or at least it's just better. Maybe we could go into last season too, because last season they were in the Champions League as well. We could take a look at it and see if I'm or not bullshitting, but at
Uh,
least this season he was okay.
let's have a look. We're back up again in the 95%.
I would say that's another great thing is he does, get the, take shots and he fires shots as well, which is nice to see.
I'm super pumped about him, mate. I'm really glad that you brought that stuff up about looking into the more difficult end of the games he's played. I mean,
So what is interesting there when I look at the defensive stats again is that his like those one-on-one numbers are a little down, but the tackles and interceptions and all that stuff is quite high, again, at least
yeah,
from the looks of things. So
interesting.
I don't know. It's a mixed bag because I've heard he's not great defensively from people who have watched him in the Primera Liga. Like there's a guy named Martin Walton who I really like, and he's been on the Irish Hotspur in the chat and everything, and he watches Sporting, and he said that he's not the greatest defensively, but I also feel like he doesn't seem to be terrible either. He doesn't seem to be useless. He doesn't seem to not useless, but he doesn't seem to be like as bad as Perisic. And I don't want to dig out Perisic, but Perisic has been taken on a few occasions and kind of been, quite easy to, to create, chances against. And I think maybe Pedro Porro would be less so. I think Pedro Porro, you might have a tougher time. So
Yeah,
he could
100%.
probably, I wouldn't say confidently, Sean, he could fit in as a right back if it went to a back four, but I wouldn't say he can't. It's like I'm given some hope here. I've been given some hope, but I'm not convinced. Let's
For
say
me, it's
There's
just a
little hope.
case of making sure whatever happens. For me, like on either event, you've like changed my perspective a little bit by making me dig into those numbers a bit more than I had previously, which is a great thing. But for me, I definitely think that in either regard, if you're going to have Perisic or Destiny Udogie next season on the left,
Right.
and you've got Pedro Porro on the right,
Too much attacking, maybe.
I just think that we need a centre back or two, right? And that's why we hope that if not, and you make a good point, the Skriniar might be dead set on going to Paris Saint-Germain, and so that is what it is.
But it
There's
makes the
plenty
need
of
for
other
a center
centre
back
backs.
even stronger. You feel like getting a very attack-minded wing back like Porro,
Yeah,
and then already preferring Perisic makes the need for a center back even stronger. Yeah,
100%. And you need someone who's fast. You need someone who's strong and who can do a job. The ball playing thing, I'm not even sure is necessarily as important if you have that width stuff. I just want someone to be super quick who can press forward, move up the line a little bit, but then get back if they get caught in trouble. And we don't have anyone with any pace really at the back at the moment. And so for me, if Pedro Porro does come in, it looks like he's going to come in, then whether we get it done this window, or I hope we can, but if not, then certainly in the summer we need at least one, but probably two. I like the guy from Benfica. I think he's awesome. Silva. He's young, he's very rapid, strong, and a great player. And
I think we do need more athleticism in that back line a little bit. Just players that are like that man mountain that can win, challenge Mitrovic's more. When we come up against players like that, but also can have that pace to be able to get in behind or sort of catch up with players who run in behind and etc. But what I would say, Sean, to make our problems even worse and to stress you out further here, Hugo isn't a great sweeper keeper either. So we've had center backs like Davies, Longley, and Dyer, who are not the quickest, but we also have a keeper like Hugo who's very reluctant to leave his own box and very reluctant to sweep, behind that back line. So that's also maybe a little bit of an explanation why we also haven't always played a super high line at times, because Hugo isn't the most confident of sweeper keepers, and it's quite easy to ping it over the top of Dyer and Davies and those sort of players too. So it's kind of like you could even solve. What you really actually want is either a goalkeeper to just take over, like you get David Raya right now or something like that. If you could, that would actually solve a lot of problems with if we wanted to play a higher line and things like that. But also because then we could actually finally play some pass backs, to the goalkeeper, and we wouldn't actually be that stressed out about it. Or you get another center back. So I would say the third signing for me should be a center back, but maybe you could work around it with a goalkeeper, but that's probably not going to happen. That's definitely not going to happen. So a center back definitely has to happen for me, Sean. I agree with you with the fact that Porro and Perisic at the same time could leave us open, even further torment, with that back three. But I don't know. It's tough.
Yep.
It's like so many things we have to plug, so many holes we have to plug, and things we have to fix.
It's great times though, mate. It's exciting times. I love the end of the transfer window. The first 25 days are usually just a frustrating affair, and then suddenly things start to come together. And I'm hopeful.
The Mexican stand, they're finally shooting. Bang,
bang, bang, bang, bang. All right, guys. There's 155, 160 of you in the chat. We've got 65 likes. If you wouldn't mind, guys, if anyone who hasn't smashed the like button yet, just do me a favor, smash the like button. It's free to do it. Helps the channel. Helps push out the right signals to the algorithm. We're going to move on right now to the Premier League table. This is the whole plan, the whole part of the game tonight, and we've got all 20 teams to look at. As I said at the start, we're not going to spend a hell of a lot of time talking about the teams from sort of 14th down. We're going to take a glance at them and figure out maybe where they are weak or strong. But then I really want to focus on this kind of area between maybe 3rd and 8th or 9th and find out whether or not, or in Jack and I's opinion, and I need all your help, please, guys, in the comments to bring your expertise as well, to let us know whether we got this right and whether this eventual Premier League table based on squad strength, squad depth is agreeable. So we're going to ask everybody as we go along to confirm or deny whether or not we think we've got the right position for the right team. We're going to start with Southampton. I'm just going to put them there for the time being because they currently do sit rock bottom of the Premier League. And here's basically, there's two metrics I can bring up straight away. From Transfer Market, guys, we can look at the supposed market value of the team. And then we can look at the individual squad themselves, the usual playing 11, the usual typical starting 11, and then figure out whether or not that you think that they're, obviously we'll have to compare and contrast as we go through this, Jack, but for the time being, we'll see whether or not they probably are the 20th worst team or the worst squad in the Premier League. So we've got Southampton squad. This is the most recent 11 or the most typical. Oh, here we go. Previous lineup from Southampton versus Newcastle on Tuesday. Bazzuno in goal, great goalkeeper, right? A talented young player, someone that I think that a lot of the guys from the Irish Hotspur would love to see come in
exactly right.
to the Tottenham scene. Got Kyle Walker-Peters, Neves. Is this the guy, the ketchup guy?
Oh, no, I'm not sure. It's Kaleta, whatever his name is. He's the former Marseille Croatian center back. We were linked with him, I think, last summer or a season, ago. I think under Nuno or something. we were
Right.
linked with Char, and then Salisu. I think
Clumsy,
Southampton is
clumsy
summarized
Salisu.
for me. I think with
Yeah.
Southampton, I think they actually have some decent defenders in terms of center backs to pick from, and they actually have decent fullbacks to pick from. They have Livermento and they have Walker Peters. I mean, I'd take Livermento. I'm not sure if I'd take Walker Peters, but Walker
Yeah.
Peters is a fine fullback for the Premier League, I think, still. Char is, I don't know much about him, but he was a center back that Spurs were heavily linked with at one stage. And then Salisu, I think, would walk straight into this back three. It's more than when you look up top, that's where they start to kind of struggle a bit more. And I think that's why Ralph Hasenhüttl was never really given enough respect, because I do think that the attackers he's had to work with have been pretty bad for the most part. And yeah, I think you can see, especially because it's Che Adams. Che Adams has been the one that they've always sort of relied on to score goals. And yeah,
that's right. I mean, look, Mislav Orsic, a great player, a player that I think that Tottenham could have done with. Obviously, we know that James Ward-Prowse is a great player as well, right? A player that most Tottenham fans would absolutely love to have. We're going to skip over Alcaraz and Diallo, but for me, like, this is obviously going to be probably a running theme of this evening's show, that when you look at the team that is rock bottom of the Premier League, and you see players in that back three or back four that would immediately come into Tottenham to improve the squad, it doesn't set the right precedent for me.
They would step ahead of Sanchez too. That, like, even if they don't step ahead of Dyer, they would probably step ahead of Tanganga. They would probably step ahead of Sanchez, and those are like our backups as well. And you have to look at that. But I would say Southampton, they're one of the teams I predicted be relegated.
Relegation.
So they're kind of where they expected them to be.
All right, we'll leave them there then for the time being, and then we'll move on to Everton. Unless anybody hasn't, obviously, guys, let me know in the comments if you have any strong opinions. But until we have something to compare Southampton to, we have to leave them where they are. So we're now going to look at Everton. Everton's squad that has a combined value, apparently, according to Transfer Market, of 408 million. So that is, 60, 70 million. So 20% more than what Southampton is currently worth. And we're going to get up their team right now. Let me find it.
I would say one player that might actually be the replacement for Moussa Dembele is that Onana guy for Everton. He's that really tall, lanky midfielder that they bought from Lille this year. I really do like him. And he had that one run against us in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this season where he, just surged past like all of our players, like with a few like touches, and then all of a sudden he was in behind. So I would say, like, for that lanky midfielder that can just take it past players easily and just be really positive, like Moussa Dembele was, I would take a look at that Onana guy. I
think you make a great point. He's a fantastic player. I also think that obviously Conor Gody and Tarkowski, for me,
they're the leaders that we would look for. They're not exactly the man mountains, but the leaders that we'd be looking for in our back line.
And Jordan Pickford's been heavily linked with Tottenham as well. Do you think he's a better choice? I'm not saying that we want him necessarily, but is he a better goalie? Would he be more secure, more reliable than Hugo Lloris if he was to come in?
I mean, this is my logic for Forster right now. Like, it's just like, I think anybody in the Premier League doesn't make the mistakes that Hugo's been making this season. Like, and so Pickford does walk in straight ahead of Hugo. I would take Pickford right now. He's not my preferred choice at all. Not my preferred choice at all. Mark,
I didn't
see if it happens
that.
again. I swear it was the chair. See if it happens again, but hold me account. Hold me to account. We'll see it. We'll see if it happens twice. Can lightning strike twice in this situation? Two toots in a minute. But for me, just quickly, Sean, though, like just quickly, Connor Cody and Tarkowski, like, I would take them for the leadership factor, like, straight away. I think even Phil has said that he wants Connor Cody because he's familiar with the back three and also like has that leadership factor more so than Dyer does. But yeah, like, I would take mostly any goalkeeper ahead of Lloris this year, because I think, what is it, Sean? He's had 4 errors leading to goals like this year, and that's more than any player, including outfield players. And that just means he's straight up been the worst goalkeeper in the league this season. Like, Hugo, just straight out been the worst goalkeeper. So it's just, I don't know.
They've got a ton of good players, mate. They really have. Like, you could look at players like, I think that Damari Gray is probably one of, like, pound for pound, the best value signings. I think they paid 1.8 million quid for Damari Gray last season. And you think 1.8 million quid in 2021, 22 or 22, 23 is peanuts. We're paying more on a loan fee for 6 months for for
Danjuma.
Danjuma, right? So but I think that Fabian Delph used to be a good player. I think that, like you say, Onana's a great player. Cody, like Tarkowski, even Leighton Baines can do a job on a day. I think that there are.
There's no way Leighton Baines is still there. That must be a mistake. He's retired. Like, he's retired
When did he retire? Last year?
Like, I feel like he retired like 10 years ago, Leighton Baines.
No. Oh, maybe. I don't know. He hasn't played this season.
That's like the Leighton Baines, the left back, right? The former left back. I think that must be. Did they get Seamus Coleman and Leighton Baines? Yeah, he must have retired years ago. I swear.
He's my age. Yeah, you're right. He's my age. Wowzers. All right. Well, let's move on from him. Forget I said that then.
The ghost of Leighton Baines is
embarrassing.
still in the stats cards.
I remember him being a good player, though.
No, I like Leighton Baines. I'd take him right now. Another player I would take.
Listen, I don't think that Everton have anything like a team that belongs in the bottom three, a squad that's in the bottom three. So if you're okay with it, guys, do you want to put put him there for the time being and then move on to the next team?
I think Frank Lampard should be doing better with that Everton side. Even though they are garbage, he should be doing better with them. So okay. I would say they should be 16th or 17th. That's actually where I predict them to finish anyways. So exactly.
We've got Bournemouth up next. Where's Bournemouth on my list? Here we go. Bournemouth. We'll put them there for the time being. What are your thoughts on Bournemouth, my man?
A mixed bag. I think most of their defenders, I actually don't know very much about, Sean, so I can't say whether I would take them actually ahead of ours. I just can't say that with any sort of confidence. Isn't it like Mepham or Mepham or something in the back for them and players like that? Zamora, I do like Zamora. He's been good down the left, I think, for them. Philip Billing is an interesting player. He could be good for our midfield, but he's also probably not actually our standard. I think most of this Bournemouth squad, I don't think really any of them could get into the Spurs team, except maybe Zamora. I think Zamora would get ahead of Sessegnon. Easily.
For me, though, I'll be honest, I don't even recognize half of the names on it. So, to me, I think that the argument is that they, as a squad level, needs to go even below Southampton for sure.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I put them dead last in my predictions this season.
Okay. Wolverhampton Wanderers up next. Let's see where they fit.
But yeah, maybe that quick point just about we keep talking about the back line, but also players like Sessegnon. I would take a majority of the left backs in the league right now.
He's so cooked, isn't he? He's got absolutely he's got nothing.
Kind of sad to see because everybody would thought this would be a debatable thing, but it feels like we're halfway through and it's not even debatable anymore whether Sessegnon is cooked or not. I don't know, but
100%.
Maybe we're being harsh.
Wolverhampton Wanderers, my man. Let's get them up for us. Let's have a look. So let me see what the people in the. Hang on a second. He's saying higher. Jacob's saying higher for Wolves. He's all about Adama Traore.
Max Kilman walks like a center back. I actually think has Spurs written all over it. Max Kilman. He would get straight into this team. I actually think it's a player Spurs could realistically look at and could get a lot out of. He's really good on the ball. I think that's his best attribute, really, is just being really good on the ball, being really composed. I think former futsal player or something like that. That's where it all came from or whatever. Yep. So I would take Max Kilman straight ahead. I would actually love for even Spurs. I'd be excited actually if Spurs brought in Max Kilman. Maybe that's sort of the nerd in me, but I actually think he's an underrated player and would be sort of make sense type of player for Spurs and could fill the English quota. That's always good too. So I like Kilman. Collins, I'm confused on. He's very young, but I've never thought he looked good ever when I've seen him. But he did get brought in there for a bit of coin. I think they got him for 20 million or 18 million or something. So
let's have a look.
I don't know. We all know Neves is one of the best midfielders in the league. Quid. Sorry, so you go.
No, I was just saying that they brought in Nathan Collins for 22 million. He's worth 22 million. What's the best players? Let's have a look at
I rated that as one of the worst transfers of this window. For me, the Nathan Collins, I just thought they just overpaid. It felt like.
Okay. Obviously, Nunez, 45 million. And Neves, Pedro Neto, Nathan Collins. Ryan Ait-Nouri, I think, is an absolute worldie. I'd love to have him in our team.
I love that you love him. Tell me why you like him, Sean. I've heard that you like him.
I think he's just he's so composed on the ball. He reminds me of Danny Rose a little bit with the way that Danny Rose used to receive the ball, get under pressure, and then just nonchalantly just take it. Never feel stressed. And at the moment, when Tottenham are so vulnerable to being pressed in the back as much as they are, and usually choke and struggle and make a mistake, players like Ait-Nouri, players like Danny Rose, whatever, would have been a perfect introduction.
He's so lovely on the ball. I really do agree. Yeah. he would be a good wing back too. Like he really would be a good wing back. Like that's sort of his position as well. I like him. And then their midfield, I actually would say
It's
kind of
amazing.
actually like I love Højbjerg, but like Nunes is amazing. Like that
Amazing.
kid is an incredible dribbler. And then we all know Neves is like basically one of the best midfilders in the world, I
Yep.
think. So that midfield kind of tramples ours, I actually think, weirdly.
I
So
think you got to find, maybe for me, just I'm gonna go. I think Wolves' squad is better than Everton's. Would you agree?
I think Wolves could be like 15th or 14th, to be
Okay. Yeah.
honest, just because of that midfield. Like that midfield has kept them in the Premier League for, and then they upgraded it even further. Like it's no longer Joao Moutinho and Neves. It's like Joao Moutinho, Neves, and Nunes. And that's a really good combination. It's a really good one.
Jacob saying their midfield is entirely better than our midfield.
I would agree.
Kilman's better
Even
than 90% of our
Bentancur,
centre
like
back.
Neves is better than Bentancur. It's sad to say, but he is. And
Yeah.
then Nunes is better than Højbjerg. And it's
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I love Wolves. I think they're a good team. They just don't score enough goals. But for me, I'm happy to put them there. But we'll keep shifting it around as we go forward. Next one up is West Ham United, the team that has spent an absolute fortune in the last 18 months.
This is going to be a big jump, I think, from where they are, because I actually thought they had a good squad going into this year, and it's just showing that David Moyes can only work with I feel like he can only work with like Premier League players or like British born players or like things like that. I don't know. I just feel like David Moyes is dramatically underperforming. Like what he seems like he can only work with like players that have been in the Premier League like a long time. But he seems to struggle with people that just moved to the team. But Paqueta, a lot of people wanted Paqueta, Sean. That was the creative midfielder that even
hasn't really settled in though, has he?
Didn't he even want to come to Spurs or like he was a Spurs fan or something?
Tottenham were interested in them. Jack, I'm so sorry, mate. Can you just take over the talk about West Ham for 2 seconds? I'll be back in.
No worries. I was gonna finish that point. I was gonna say like a lot of people are kind of upset about like how Paqueta, we didn't go after him because he's one of the guys that was a Spurs fan, or at least a Spurs fan, or had like some sort of like affiliation with us in some sort of way. And like a lot of people are upset that not only we needed a creative midfielder, but we also needed just that sort of extra option for the midfield, and he could have been that. And he's technically a Spurs fan, I guess. They brought in Emerson from Chelsea, I believe, to be a wingback. That wasn't a bad move. They also have, I think, like what's his face, Chilwell, or no, what's his face, Cresswell. They have Cresswell as well. They can play him as a wing back. They also have the likes of I would say Soufal, those sort of guys at right wing back. I'm not too convinced on, but I just think he could be doing so much better with this squad. Everybody, West Ham, like their back line, Zuma, the cat kicker. Like you would take him. I wouldn't want him in our team, but he would step into this team. I think Obana would step into that team. I think Aguerd is unbelievable. He was brilliant for Morocco. I think he would step into this team. Their goalkeeper, Aurier, or whatever his name is, Alphonse Areola, I would take. He steps into this team, or at least ahead of Hugo. I think Alphonse Areola steps ahead. He even might not even bad replacement of Hugo, but I don't know why he's not playing ahead of Fabianski. And then Jared Bowen, the attack, yeah, probably not. That's where they kind of lack. Skamaka was not a bad signing, though. Skamaka was not a bad signing, and I think he could have gotten a lot more to Skamaka. But I would say, Sean, to summarize what I was saying, their back three gets into ours, except for Romero. Aguerd would have been a brilliant signing, I think, because he is left-footed, too. I think
Declan Rice.
What's his name? Craig Dawson, is that right?
Yeah, Craig Dawson, yeah.
He would walk into our team, and he's not even that great, but he is brilliant in the air. He's brilliant in the air, but he would get into our team. I think Zuma gets into our team. I think Ogbonna gets into our team. I think the majority of that backline gets into the team. Declan Rice, one of the best midfielders in the world.
Soufal's a fantastic player. I think he's a brilliant player. You got Jared Bowen.
He's not good enough going forward. He's more of like a back four right back. He's like he's not good as a wing back, I think, Soufal, in my opinion, at least. So he's more of like for a back four. And I think with right wing back, I would actually have Emerson instead of Soufal. I think I would have Emerson instead.
How old is Fabianski these days?
He's so old. I was talking about how Alphonse Areola, Alphonse Areola, they have as the backup. I would much rather have Alphonse Areola. And I would even have him as a potential, even like, I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago, Sean, we were talking about Hugo replacements. And I kind of, after his year with Fulham, because he had a good year with Fulham, Alphonse Areola. And I kind of wanted Spurs to go after him after he had that year with Fulham on loan or whatever it was. So I rate Areola.
West Ham though, nowhere near as good as Wolves in the
They
depth,
should
right?
finish. They should be, I think, 9th or 8th with the squad they have. I think.
Oh, you think they've
personally.
got a better? You think they've got a better squad than Wolverhampton Wanderers? Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Interesting.
I
Let me
think
know in the chat, guys. What do you think in the chat? West Ham better squad than Wolves?
maybe Wolves even gets bumped up higher. To be honest, like they could get bumped up higher. Put them 11th or something like that. Yeah, and then maybe West Ham 10th. Yeah,
We'll
I'd do
figure it
that.
out. We'll figure
Yeah,
it
we'll
out.
figure it out. But yeah, definitely bump them up high.
Ben Rama, or Ben Rama. Yeah, Ben Rama's a good player.
He is a good.
Jared Bowen's awesome as well. But you're right, a lot of money spent from. It's amazing what a difference a year makes. A season can make. What's his name? The coach going from hero to kind of zero right now, and he's on the
I remember
block, right?
we as Spurs fans even used we were like, Jesus, even West Ham are spending. We were kind of like, a lot of people were kind of saying that too, right?
Yeah,
And,
they spent a fortune. They spent an absolute fortune.
Yeah.
And got absolutely nowhere. Leeds United.
I think that says more about David Moyes, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Leeds United up next. Let's have a look at these fellas. Who we got? This is the game against Brentford on the 22nd of January. Meslier in goal. Fantastic goalkeeper. Young goalkeeper. Still makes mistakes every now and again, but certainly going to be probably one of the players to most likely replace Hugo in the French team. Would you like him as a candidate to come into Tottenham Hotspur, Jack, or do you think he's a little bit too young, too raw?
It's almost like he's sort of plateaued a little bit with his development. Like I think he looked amazing when he first was brought in under Bielsa, but has started to look a little shaky from time to time under Jesse Marsch and under the end days of Bielsa. He started to look a little shaky. I think he's going to be a brilliant goalkeeper in the future. It just might be that it's almost too soon where it's like we need to wait. He would need to develop for a few more years before he's ready for Spurs, I think. So that's why it might be too soon to go after him. That's why we're looking at David Raya, maybe players like that. So sadly, no, maybe for Meslier.
When you look down these centre backs, I mean, Leeds are a team that you think more about when, apart from Luke Ayling, who's an interesting player, a bit of a shithouser. There's not too much in the back line here that I feel like is
I would take Maximilian Verber. I would take Verber. I would take Struijk, and I would take Christensen ahead of most of our center backs. I think with Verber, he came from Salzburg. He's been actually good for them since he's come in. And I think he's a recent signing as well for Leeds. I think he was just brought in this season or this January window. And then as well, Struijk is better on the ball than most of our center backs. So I would take him for that reason. And then he's not bad in the air either, actually, Struijk. I think he's even scored a goal against us, actually, from a set piece or something like that. And then who is it as well? Christensen, that guy they also brought in from RB Salzburg.
He was the wing back, wasn't he? Who scored 25 goals or something and 55 brilliant assists or whatever, playing in the Scandinavian, it's the Swedish league or something.
Might be a different guy. He's a Danish player. He came from RB Salzburg. He's just a hard-nosed defender. He can play as a center back, can play as a right back. Oh. I like him. He's kind of like Ivanovic. That's what I would describe him as. He's like Ivanovic.
I'm sure Leeds signed a player in the window that was a wing back, like a right wing back or a right back that scored, that had an amazing run last season in terms of goals and assists, but he was doing it in a shitty league and he went to Leeds.
I think their midfield is brilliant. It's
Jack Harrison's a good player, right? Really good player, young player.
Luis Sinisterra they brought in. That was a good signing. I feel like Jesse Marsch could be doing better with this side, to be honest. They play brilliant football, but he could be doing better with them. Tyler Adams and Mark Roca were brilliant signings. I even did a video on Leeds, actually, on Flat Cap a while ago. On why
doing better than 15th.
I rated them as one of the best windows. I actually thought they had one of the best windows.
So better than 15th, but do they have as good a squad as West Ham?
Definitely
and Wolves?
not. No, I think that so. He's not completely underperforming, but he should be 13th or 12th, I think, with the squad he has.
All right, we'll stick that there for the time being. Let me know if you guys are
Gnonto, right? People say Gnonto. Yeah, he is. Really he does look good. Yeah, you're right.
And who's the little fella? The little guy who runs around at 100 miles an hour?
Gnonto, I think.
Isn't that another one?
They have two of them.
What am I thinking of?
Somerville.
That's it. Yeah, I think he's class as well. Really, really good player. Really, really good player.
And Aronson, we totally forgot. Brendan Aronson, I would absolutely love in our team.
He's the American guy, isn't he?
He's terrific. The Medford Messi, the New Jersey Medford Messi. He's my favorite American player, actually.
He's very good player. Very, very good player. All right, next up, Leicester City, another team with I mean, look, we have to look at their squad because they might be getting a bit old now, but I mean, again, massively underperforming. How do I get back to it? Where do I go? Here we
Yeah,
go.
they are. It's a weird one with Leicester City because I do think their squad is secretly pretty poor, but also like they should be doing better. It's a weird one. It's a weird one. Like they should be doing better, but I do think the squad is quite poor, especially in the back line. Um, I don't think Daniel Amarte is like someone that is really a Premier League center back of any sort. I think Johnny Evans has been kind of injured a lot. He was brilliant for them for so long, but probably needs to go. I'm not sure even what it is with Johnny Evans, but I think he's a good center back. He probably actually still walk into this team, Johnny Evans.
They've
But
got so much talent. I remember all summer looking at people like that down their right back options that they have that
yeah,
were
that was it. The right back options
they
were
have James Justin. Was it another one? Pereira, not Pereira. Well, yeah, it was Pereira. Ricardo Pereira,
Castagna.
Castagna as well. Yeah, I like even this. I mean, obviously you've got the James Maddison, Tillmans. I mean, look, obviously we're valuing their squad as it is rather than what it's going to look like at the end of the summer because it looks like they're probably going to lose a couple of these guys. But
I think they have a worse squad than Wolves, and I do think
do
they
you?
actually might have. Yeah, I do think they have a worse squad than Wolves. They also lost Adamalo Lookman. That was a big loss for them.
Yeah, he went to Atalanta and scored like 15 goals this season, hasn't he,
Man,
or
he was
something?
like really good for them last year. I remember too. Like I don't maybe they just had to let him go and get some money in. Um, like what is it? They're Vardy and who is it? Iheanacho and
I think they've got a great. I think they've got a
they have
great
good
squad.
strikers to pick from. They have Harvey Barnes as well, and then they
Daxon,
have James Madison. I like Dewsbury Hall. I just think their backline is actually almost as bad as ours, Sean. They have a terrible
Vestergaard.
back.
Yeah, Vestergaard is slow. I remember who was it who tore him apart? Oh, Stephen Bergwijn tore him apart, didn't he?
Yeah.
In the clip.
Wout
Yeah,
Faes is their best center back, and he miraculously scored 2 own goals. So,
yeah,
like, he's their
yeah,
best
yeah.
center back. That's it, you would say. Like, and no offense to him, he scored 2 own goals in a game.
So what are we thinking then? So, I mean, I think these. I personally think they've got a better squad than West Ham. Maybe not as good as
Maybe,
Wolves.
yeah. Wow, that's a tough one for me. Because I think
Oh,
Declan Rice and like Neves, like those are like 2 of the best midfielders in the world. Like, I think so. Like, when you have like players like that, like it's sometimes tough. I know they can't do it
what about the
all, but
manager? What about the manager of Leicester? Do you think he's still got the stones, or do you think he's just getting a bit old and
Brendan
tired now?
Rodgers,
Yeah,
the LinkedIn
yeah.
manager, looking for jobs everywhere. I don't know. I don't want Brendan Rodgers. He seems to be a good manager, but might have too high of an opinion of himself as well. Like it's a bit of a weird mix where I think he is worth, probably, a good club. Like he's worth, managing a good club, but I think he's made some murmurings of the past and things like that about, like he deserves more and stuff like that. I don't know. Like I just don't think Brendan Rodgers is like a top 4 manager. That's how I would put it. Like
Are you okay with this
he
though?
doesn't deserve a top 4 team. I don't think he deserves a top 4 team.
See, I don't think the Leeds. I personally can't see Leeds being. We've got to fill in these 18th space, 16th and 15th, and the team we're getting through the squads now, and like I think Forest is probably going to take up one of those positions, and then maybe Aston Villa, but after that, and Crystal Palace. We've still got Crystal Palace to go through as well. So I want. Do you think that Wolves is better than Leicester? Do you think Leicester's better than West Ham? Or do you actually you initially said that you thought West
I
Ham
just
was
think
better
with
than Wolves?
Leicester, like it's a similar thing with Spurs, where I just think their backline is so terrible. Like I wouldn't take any of their defenders. And Sean, like you know me, I don't want any of our defenders. So if I
Yeah,
don't really
yeah.
want any of their defenders, like I think that deserves like some major dropping
Leicester.
of
This is Leicester we're
points.
talking
Whereas
about.
like
Yeah.
West Ham, I would have taken all of their center backs. I would have taken all of Leeds as center backs. I would have taken all of Wolves as center backs, basically. So that's how I sort of am looking at it, is more the
Okay.
defense. But like Madison is a world class player, and I'm not world class, but you know what I mean. Like he's a brilliant player.
He's up there, isn't he? He's
Yeah,
up
and
there.
so I don't know. It's a confusing one, but I think it's worrisome when you look at Leicester's backline, and like I just not jumping at any of their center backs. Like I'm not eager to take any of them, which is weird because I would take almost anybody. I would take them. I would take Harry. I would take Harry Sutor from whatever his name is from Australia, the guy
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
Sunderland.
yeah,
I would
yeah.
take him. Like I'd have him walk straight. I'd take Harry Maguire. Like my limits are very low. Like it's not a high bar.
Wow.
It's not a
So
high
that's how you
bar.
really feel about Dyer and Davies.
It's not a high bar,
Yeah.
Sean. It's not a high bar. So like I would if I'm not taking Leicester's, like that's not good. Yeah, that's not good.
All right. So most of these teams then we've gone through so far are underperforming. So we're gonna have to now fill in the gaps. Someone has to be overperforming. Next up, we've got Nottingham Forest. Let's get them in. I'll put them. Where are they? Put them. I don't know. Put them there for the time being. I mean, they bought 25,000 players, haven't they? So, let's have a look at them.
It's almost like you could even make up some of the players that have gone there, and you could slip them by me, and I wouldn't know. I feel like they probably are where it's almost like Steve Cooper is now starting to outperform, but at first I thought he was underperforming.
Yeah, Serge Aurier, he's actually done okay for Nottingham Forest, isn't he?
Yeah, but he had an absolute howler the last game they played. The commentator, the side analyst, was digging into him for 90
really?
minutes.
I didn't see that.
He even went as far as to say, I can see why Spurs got rid of him.
Really?
Actually, yeah, on live commentary. It was brilliant.
So we've got Dean Henderson, obviously a cracking goalkeeper, but he's only on loan. Again, most of these players, they've signed so many players that. How many defenders have they got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've got about 16 defenders. That's mad. Midfielders.
Oh, that's right. They signed Craig Dawson or Michael Dawson or whatever.
That happened just recently, didn't it? A couple of days ago or a few weeks, last week.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's Michael Dawson. That's not the same Michael Dawson.
I think it's
that's the old Michael Dawson from Tottenham days that still must be put in there.
Craig Dawson. They must mean Craig Dawson.
Oh,
Another Leighton Baines. It's the ghost of Michael Dawson. The Forest side.
What the hell is going on, Sky Sports? Update your systems. Look, there's nobody here that we'd have, is there? There's nobody in the Nottingham Forest forward line or midfielders that Tottenham would have.
Like maybe Nico Williams, you would take a right wing back, like ahead of some of them.
Lingard.
No, I wouldn't take Jesse now. I wouldn't take Morgan Gibbs White. I find him to be
They paid a lot of money for him, didn't they? They paid a huge amount of money for him.
I don't care how well he does for them. They well overpaid for that guy.
I'd almost go as far as to say that you put Southampton in.
Yeah, you almost would, wouldn't you? Yeah, I'd do that too, Sean. I don't disagree with that. Actually. All right. So that shows that Steve Cooper is kind of turning it around right now.
Doing a very good job. Yeah, he's turning it.
Because at first I thought he was actually underperforming with the players he had, but now it looks like he's overperforming. Funny how it works that way.
So Crystal Palace is up next. Let's assume that they're going to go into this spot here, but we'll take a look at them. I'm looking forward to getting into the teams that I really want to compete and debate with you about, because all of this stuff is a little bit kind of...
I hope we're moving quickly enough. But Crystal Palace, I would say Eberiche Eze, Sean, one of my favorite players in the Premier League, just in general. Like, I love that kid. I think he's beautiful to watch. And I think he would be...
Eze,
if we didn't sign Danjuma, I would say that would be the Sonny replacement / Sonny competition I would go for. Can also play through the middle, as we can see right there. Mm-hmm. And I would take Elise and I would take Zaha. Take all three of them. I'd be happy to have all of them.
Would you take Guehi? I mean,
yes.
Everyone says we should have Mark Guehi. I've heard loads of different channels saying it, but against Tottenham, for that fourth goal, he got absolutely... I think it was for the Sonny mistake when Sonny scored the goal. To go 4-0 up, he got absolutely. He was just positionally was all at sea. I didn't think he was very good.
One of our defenders would have made. It was a familiar sight. I'd still take him. Guehi. He's young. He's got, I think he even has a cap for England. Like last season, he had a terrific season. Yeah. I think he's still a great
Anderson as well, right? Anderson's a good player.
Absolutely take Anderson. That was a huge miss by us, I thought, and actually, in my opinion. Even regardless of Antonio Conte, I think we should have brought him in like when we had the chance to. I thought that was a great opportunity when he was leaving Fulham or whatever it was. Yeah. Or Lyon. Yeah, that was a great choice.
So they've got probably 3 or 4 players that we'd have, right? You're right about Eze. You're right about Zaha. Possibly Guehi. Definitely Anderson. Trying to think.
Tyreek Mitchell, I would take ahead of Sassuolo, but that's just being picky.
Not a bad team. All right, where do we put them in? Are they going to go? they probably got a better squad than Everton. Are they about right in 16th? You think?
Yeah, that looks maybe ahead of Leeds.
Yeah. Okay.
Just because of the forward line that they have.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Chris Richards, Jacob is saying, Richards walks in our backline.
That's an American guy. I don't know if he's even played. He's played a little bit for them this season.
We've got one more team to do to finish off the bottom half, and then we'll reflect. And that is Aston Villa. Let's presume that they're going to go in 12th, but we'll figure that one out. Where are we? Aston Villa. Look, Aston Villa spent another team that spent an absolute fortune.
They've done it each and every window. It seems like
Yeah.
for like the past 3 or 4 windows. I feel like they need to. They signed Unai Emery, so finally they signed a good manager.
They've got a good manager now. Yeah.
But them signing Steven Gerrard and then spending all of that money was a really bad decision. I thought that was silly of them because it just feels like they're going to end up now selling a bunch of the players that were brought in under him. Like they almost Evertoned themselves to a degree. It felt like just overspending with no European football and also having a shit manager.
100%. Guys, 90 of you have liked the video. There's still 125, 130 people I can see. If you haven't already, please hit the like button for me. It really helps the video. And I hope this is enjoyable. We're trying to get through these bottom 10 as quick as we can so we can get down to the nitty gritty and figure out where are Tottenham. And we're going to come into that very soon. Let's look at Aston Villa right now. I mean, any of these players, I would take Martinez all day long over as a goalkeeper over what they have. In terms of players in the defense, I mean, Tyrone Mings is I don't know if he's.
I don't even know if I would have him ahead of Eric Dyer. Yeah.
Lucas Dean, or 2 years ago's Lucas Dean I would have had. The Everton version of him. I don't know if I'd take this particular version of him, but he comes in at left back for sure over Sessegnon.
I would take Ezri Konsa ahead of. He's also that. He's a Spurs fan.
Yeah.
I would take Konsa ahead of. Oh yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe he's not in there. He's in
there.
He
is. There he is. He's there. Yeah. Who's the guy? Who was the guy that had the massive thighs? Do you remember that guy? We spoke about.
Oh, John McGinn.
John McGinn. That's it. Yeah. Where is he?
I would take John McGinn.
I'd take John McGinn. He's absolutely.
I would take him ahead of like Skippy or something like that. Or
yeah. He doesn't start ahead of.
Does he get ahead of Højbjerg? It's a tough one. I don't think so.
Comparable, I think. Comparable.
Very similar players. Similar players. That's a tough one.
Moving forward, look, there's not a hell of a lot of players. They spent a lot of money, but there's not a massive amount of players here that I would take. They've obviously just sold Danny Ings as well, haven't they? Where's he gone to? Has he gone to West Ham?
I just think the pattern here is, Sean, is that when it comes to our forward line, like majority, we're going to be very, very picky as Spurs fans when it comes to like forwards and attackers and things, because that's where we usually are at our best. It's just that defense that we usually take anybody. But with Aston Villa, like you said, I wouldn't even know if I would take many of Aston Villa's defenders. So that's quite strange.
Yeah, there's only a couple.
They have a comparable defense. Like I think theirs is maybe just as good as ours, if not slightly better or something. Like
Boubacar Kamara's all right, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, their squad is even Coutinho. He's
so washed. He seems washed.
He's washed, isn't he? He started off well for them last season, but hasn't really came in. I think that I'd almost go as far as to say that Aston Villa should, for me, probably like maybe you could almost promote one or two of these.
They spent a lot of money, but they haven't spent it well by the looks of things.
I'd put Aston Villa around 14th in terms of when you look at that squad in detail there. Like there really isn't that much to get excited about. There's no big names. There's no one. Yeah. Leander Dendonker's all right. There's no one. Are you happy with that?
I think you're spot on. I think you handled that well.
All right, so we've gone the bottom half of the table by squad. Actually, we're not entirely sure. Things might change, but Wolverhampton Wanderers are at 11th, West Ham 12th, Leicester 13th, Villa 14th, Palace 15th, Leeds 16th, Everton 17th, and the bottom three that are candidates to go down or should be on squad performance is Southampton, Forest, and Bournemouth. I look at Ellie. Ellie's chimed in.
Absolutely right, Ellie. Put your foot down.
Yeah, fair play. Fair play. Douglas Luiz is better than Son this season, says Paul. Yeah, that's a good point.
Two different positions, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's move into this. Let's move into the good stuff. Here we go. This is going to be interesting. So let's look at Chelsea's current squad. I need to get up Chelsea's overall.
Did you see Mudrik's cameo? at all, Sean?
Against Liverpool.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
looked
looks very
spectacular.
good. Looks very, very good, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Terrifying, in fact.
He did look kind of terrifying. Like he just feels like he does whatever he wants, sort of guy.
Such a quick feet, low center of gravity. Okay, let me get this up because I think Chelsea, they're currently in 10th, but I think they have the second highest squad value now. They're just over $1 billion according to Transfer Market. Mudryk isn't even in this one yet.
They have, I think, on paper, I find, like, of course, they have 1,000 injuries, but even with the players they still have available, I think Graham Potter should be doing so much better.
Miles better. Like, miles better. I mean, I know it's a new thing, right? But they have
like the way that Spurs
everywhere.
fans have put pressure on Conte. Imagine if like Conte had these set of players available to him, we would tear him apart. I think if Conte had these set of players to pick from.
Let's go through it. Like, how many of them immediately get into Tottenham? Kepa, 100%.
I mean, both of their goalkeepers get
both
get ahead, even though they're not great. Both of them get ahead.
Mendy and Kepa
their whole back line. Like what defender? I mean, Romero gets into their team, but their whole, like, Trevor Chalobah, I would take. Koulibaly, I would take.
Badiashile for sure. Even Silva at his old age.
Fantastic signing too. That was a great signing. Thiago
Reece
Silva.
James.
It's exactly what we need. We are crying out for Thiago Silva in our team. If we had if Conte had Thiago Silva alone, just him alone, we would be a much better team. Much better team. So that actually gives Conte, I think, a bit of respect. And then you also then cock your eyebrow a bit at like Potter, because it's just kind of like, what are you doing? Like,
I think he's out of his depth, mate. I think it's a step too far for him. Like, going from a team where he's a project guy who's taken Brighton from the nowhere, everyone respects him. He's the captain of that ship, builds them up, to suddenly jumping into, like, he's gone from being the captain of a big size yacht to the captain of a cruise liner or whatever, or an oil tanker. I just think that maybe some of these names are a little bit too like they need to be controlled by someone with a proper ego, proper brand, proper gravitas behind the name.
That's why I'm liking this exercise, though, because this just showed me, like, if Conte took over this team right now, like, that team would not be like as bad as they look right now. Like, I just don't think they would be. Like, and also then it puts in things in a further perspective for me, because I do torture myself listening to Talk Sport a lot, Sean, and when people talk about Chelsea, they complain about their injuries so much, but like, you look at like all of the players that they have to pick from that aren't even injured, the players that aren't even injured, like, it's just, they should be doing so much better. They should be doing so much better. Like, they don't have the excuse, I think, of even injuries. Like, I don't really think they do. Like, they have.
There's basically not a single player in this midfield list that I don't think.
And the back line, we already thought the back
line, of course. The back line speaks for itself. Like, I'll take any one of those guys. I don't even know who Alfie Gilchrist is, or Mason Burstow, or Josh Brooking, or Bashir Humphreys. I'm sure those guys are youth team, but they're probably better than what we have. But Koulibaly's been a bit of a mistake, a bit of a flop. But maybe I don't know
Conte,
why
he would be good.
I think he'd be great. I mean, maybe there's an option. Listen, I don't know how that would go down with Tottenham fans, but because he's been relatively disappointing at Chelsea. But when he signed for Chelsea, every Tottenham fan was like, why can't we go and get a guy like him?
Yeah, that we were mad about that one, I remember. Yeah.
So for me, like, I'm just going to go, to be honest, like, I don't know if you're going to disagree with that, but just to start the ball rolling, I think you've got to put them at least somewhere here.
Third or second.
Let's put them there for the time being and come back to them, shall we?
Totally agree.
Let me know if you guys agree, guys. Let's have a look.
Get Potter out. Jesus, when you look at that, get him out.
It's insane. Well, but how many games did Tuchel have of this season before he came in?
But he wasn't doing that bad. That was the thing. Like, he wasn't doing as poor as Potter is. Like, I think Potter's record is worse than Tuchel's. Like,
it's another reason why I think Todd Bowley is a bit out of his depth. It's very easy to spend other people's money, which is what he's doing, right? He's spending leverage debt money, spending private equity money.
It's a consortium.
Exactly. It's very easy to come in and do that. But if you haven't got a plan, I'm not saying that Tottenham do have a plan, because I think we're rudderless in terms of that philosophy as well. But like, he's just coming in, wants to stamp his mark on things. I heard this rumor that the reason why they signed Koulibaly was because he was walking past and he overheard Tuchel talking to somebody else. And the guy goes, who would you like? And he went, I wouldn't mind that Koulibaly guy. And then the next day, Koulibaly was signed by, and like, he goes, I've got a present. Like, he basically said, I've got a present,
like a new car.
You know, so I
That's
don't know if I don't
hilarious.
know how true that is, but that's the story that I've heard a few times, banded around.
And they have Madueke, says Jacob, too. Like, Jesus, they should be doing, like, I don't know. They just signed Madueke and Mudryk.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Get him out. Get Potter out. He's got to start winning games.
I'm happy for him to stay. To be honest, I'm happy for him to
Yeah.
stay.
What am I saying? What am I saying? Keep him in.
You know, I just wonder whether or not at the end of the season, if Conte was to leave, do you think he would go back to Chelsea? Because he would turn that team into something, wouldn't he?
It just, that put things into perspective where it's like all those guys that we think are underperforming for Chelsea. It's like, are they underperforming if Conte took that team over? Maybe not.
Don't know. Yeah, we'll have to wait. Hopefully, we won't have to figure it out. But I personally think that someone like Graham Potter probably fits the Tottenham mold more than Chelsea, and that someone like
but then
Conte
he burned
fits
that
Chelsea
bridge
more.
burned that bridge by saying he's too good for us at the same time. So he's he's a bit of he made a mistake there. At least in my book, he did.
For sure, 100%.
What are we looking at next?
Liverpool. Interesting one. This one, not the same squad as last season, is it? So
the midfield is where it's a bit interesting. Like I think they would love some of our midfielders. Liverpool, they would love a Højbjerg, they would love a Bentancur, they would love a Basuma. They need like hardworking midfielders like that. I would happily take Thiago. I think that would make us a much better team if we did have a Thiago.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I don't know if I would take.
They're too old. How old's Milner and Henderson now? Milner's got to be 36, 37, isn't he?
Way too old. And he doesn't even play in midfield. He plays like right back, so.
Yeah. Simicast is not going to scare anybody. Carvalho, like, good player, but...
You would take Robertson. You would take Andy Robertson right now. I think I would take him at left wing back.
Oh, for sure.
Trent, it's a funny one. I actually think if Trent continues to like kick up a fuss or something, like would he play as a right wing back? He doesn't have to defend as much and things like that. I wonder if he'd be curious, taking that sort of position, because I would love to have Trent, but his attitude has been stinking up the place this season. Like you can tell, like he's just not into it. So it's a weird one. Joel Matip absolutely walks into this team. He's brilliant center back. I think Matip, especially on the ball, he's brilliant.
Yep.
Joe Gomez, I think, is really overrated. I actually wouldn't take him.
I think Gomez is awful, but Konate's fantastic.
Konate's fantastic. Van Dijk is fantastic.
Van Dijk obviously is fantastic. Don't know about Nathaniel Phillips. Don't know about Kwanzaa. Don't know
about three or four guys that walk into the team in the back line. The midfield, not so much. Like maybe Harvey Elliott.
Elliott, yeah.
Creative midfielder.
Thiago. The rest of them, not that bothered. Naby Keita, not that interested in. Simicast doesn't excite me. Yeah, their midfield is where their problems are, isn't it? Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. Then you go up the top, and you got, obviously the Ox, but Mo Salah, Firmino, Cody Gakpo. Although Cody Gakpo's been absolutely a massive disappointment.
Yeah, he has been a disappointment. It's the battle between him and Antony, I think, between who's going to be the more disappointing winger from the Dutch league. I think Cody Gakpo will eventually come good, whereas Antony, I think his true colors are starting to show with him just being a TikTok footballer. Luis Diaz, you would take. I don't know. I think Liverpool, you sort of maybe understand where they are.
Underperforms, shitty midfield that needs to be replaced, and a very good defense, but has no protection from the midfield at the moment, right? So,
I think you just look at the money wasted on Darwin Nunez, because they needed to fix the midfield, and they decided to spend $100 million on a striker that takes 12 shots a game and misses all of them. Do you think that I would say they're like seventh, something like that, or sixth.
All right, we'll start there. Let me know if you guys are okay with that in the chat, guys. Keep smashing the like button as well if you haven't already. Thanking you. Who's up next? We have Brentford. Let's go to Brentford.
Do you like Thomas Frank?
I do like Thomas Frank. Yeah, I do like Thomas Frank. I think that depending on whatever happens with Tottenham, if Tottenham was to have that kind of, the way I was feeling before, I was like, a couple of weeks ago, nuke the whole thing, factory reset the whole thing, expect Kane to go, probably move Sonny on, get rid of, start the whole thing again, project manager, that kind of stuff. I don't feel quite as strongly about that as I did back then. But if that was the case, I think Thomas Frank would be a manager that I'd be okay with coming in the future. I think he's a real talent. What are your thoughts on
look at that squad he has right there. It looks like he's kind of massively outperforming, and he kind of always has been outperforming, with the squad I think he has available. Ivan Toney, we know, is brilliant. I think Mbeumo is also brilliant. Rico Henry, I think, would probably get into this team. I like Rico Henry a lot, but then the rest of that team, Sean, like I don't like. They have good players there. Like I think Brentford, but I don't take really any. Ben Me, I would take.
He's a good player. Yeah.
The rest of their center backs, like maybe walk into this team, but like I think
Not
it's
really.
just more how good he is. Like Thomas Frank, like he has a very good organized defense, and he gets the lot out of the players that he has. And I would say it's only Ben Me that I would take. Really,
there's nobody, not in the midfield either. There's nobody in the midfield that I'm looking at that I'm like, oh yeah, please come in and help us out. And then up top,
I'm with you.
Ivan Toney, obviously, and and Buemo's a good player. I like Buemo.
I think you take Rico Henry, like I said, ahead of maybe Sassignon and Perisic. Maybe you take Rico Henry. He's a good player. He's their left wing back in that team.
So in terms of squad strength,
he's massively outperforming. Like he's like, I think.
Would you put him below?
Well below these guys. He's like near relegation, I would say. He's near relegation. I think he has
like here, about the same as Villa.
I think Leeds have a better squad than he does.
Wowzers. Okay. Holy shit! Look at Brentford.
Personally, I do. I think Ivan Toney is brilliant, right? But that's not
not the
whole
Tony
team. That's not the whole
Raya.
team.
Tony and Raya, that's it, really, isn't it? And like you say, Rico Henry
and Mbeumo, but it's just more like there are a lot of like no-name players that he gets so much out of.
You'd almost make the argument that Everton have got better players, but I'm okay.
They
with
would love to have
16th.
a guy like Onana. Look at the players they have, like Onana, Tarkovsky, those sort of guys. They would love to have players like that. Brentford.
Wow. So Brentford are punching 8 places above their standard.
We don't have time for it. I even would make the argument like Everton have a better squad than Brentford, but I'm not going to do it just because Tony has Tony. They would love to have Tony. Like it kind of goes both ways. Like Everton would cry out for an Ivan Toney. Like Ivan Toney would save their season if they had a guy like him.
That's crazy, isn't it? Literally, Brentford have got 2 or 3 players that would make it into most teams. Southampton have got 2 or 3 players that would make it into a lot of teams as well. It's crazy. It's crazy how well he's done.
They were harsh on Ralph Hasenhüttl. I like Ralph Hasenhüttl. I think he was doing well for like plenty of seasons with the squad he had. He had a shit squad, and I thought keeping them up as long as he did.
Yeah, right. Let me know your thoughts, guys. If you're thinking that it's fair to put Brentford based on squad strength down in 16th place.
Do you want to do another shake-up of a team, Sean, that's going to move everybody about here?
Go on then. Which one?
Fulham. I think Fulham is also
They're
a team.
They're up next, I think, aren't they? Yes, they are. Fulham are up next.
I think you're also going to have to move some teams around here because Fulham, it's like Joao Palhinha, brilliant midfielder, Mitrovic, brilliant striker. But then, like, the rest of the team is, like, sort of Marco Silva is impressively, I think, doing a lot with the players he has. Like, he's had Manar Solomon, but he's been out, like, the whole season as well. I think with injury, too, Solomon has. Like, Kenny Tete has been around for a few seasons, but they bought him, like, during the Scott Parker, like, days. Tim Ream, he's gotten the best out of Tim Ream.
He's such an average player, but playing very, very well.
But he's performing out of his skin. Same thing with Adebayo. Same thing with a lot of these guys. Like he's getting the most. Harrison Reed. This is the best I've ever seen Harrison Reed play for a team like Fulham. Who else?
Yeah, I thought Tete was good. Was good on Monday night as well.
Anthony Robinson. I would take. He's a good player, and I think Spurs would benefit from him and could be a good player for us. But. And like he has a good back line, but sort of is still getting the most out of that back line. Like he's doing very well with it. I just think Marco Silva is like Thomas Frank, Sean. I think he's like outperforming.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
His forwards are okay.
Pereira's class. I like Pereira. Class player, I think.
But they still had to hinge all of their hopes on him having a good season. Like it's not they signed a couple of like Pereiras. They only signed one Pereira. And let's say he had a stinker like he had at Man United. Like Marco Silva would have been left with like, let's say Pereira was a dud, Sean, you would look at that and be like, wow, he has nobody there. But the fact that Pereira turned out to be a good player for him is again, like, I don't know. He's doing a lot. I think Marco Silva, he's getting a lot out of his team. So I would put his squad, I think is better than Brentford's. I don't know if it's better than Leeds's. I don't know if it's better than Leeds's. I think Fulham's, I think it's worse than Leeds's.
It's a close one. It's better than Palace's. I
think it's better than Palace's. It's better than Palace.
Maybe those two are wrong way around. Maybe like
no. I think his is better than Palace's because like his defense, like Palace's defense, is better than Fulham's defense.
Wait, so hang on. So what are you saying? You're saying
I think
Fulham.
Crystal Palace have a better team than Fulham does. Yeah.
It's like
And
this.
then, but then Leeds have a better team than Crystal Palace do, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
So
no, the other way around. Crystal Palace have a better team than Leeds, in my opinion. Sorry. So that's how I think it would look. Yeah.
Wow. So
I don't even know
both
though.
leagues.
Like Fulham, like originally when I looked at them, like first
Fulham
impressions of
could be
their
worse than
squad.
Brentford.
Yeah, when I had their first impressions of the squad this season, I thought they were going to be like 17th, 18th or something. So I don't
Done
know.
amazingly well.
Do they have a better
Jacob
squad than
saying
Brentford? I don't
Fulham
know.
below Palace. We've got him below Palace, above Brentford. You reckon like that, do you, Jacob? Okay.
Yeah, I think you had it right earlier.
All right.
Wow.
All right.
Credit to Thomas Frank and Marco Silva. Those are Sean. We're doing a bit of manager shopping at the same time. Those are the two. Those are the fucking two.
Those are the definite two for sure. They play good football as well. You know, they play good football. Who we got up next? Brighton and Hove Albion. Another team that. Oh, wrong one. That's not it. That's Brentford. Let's go to Brighton.
De Zerbi has also kind of shown up Potter.
Another
in
good
fact.
manager.
He's shown up Potter, I think, because the whole
football
belief
that
was
Brighton
like,
are playing right now is absolutely superb. Absolutely superb.
the fact that they couldn't score goals under Potter, and it was all about like, oh, he doesn't have a real striker or anything. And then De Zerbi just took over that exact same team and then was able to get them to score goals immediately. Like in their first game, they scored like 4 or whatever it was, like, immediately when he came in. So it just shows like a lot of.
But they have got a good squad, though, mate. They got a good squad, right? Obviously, Sanchez in goal. I probably wouldn't have Sanchez.
I would take Sanchez ahead of Lloris, absolutely.
Ahead of Lloris, but he wouldn't be my first choice of other goalkeepers that are out there.
Yeah,
you look at their defenders, though. I'm not a huge fan of Tarek Lamptey, but I like Lewis Dunk.
Yeah, Colwell is good. I think if you've seen him this season.
Excellent as well. Veltman's a good player. Who was one that you just said?
Colwell, Colwell or whatever his name is. He's been like kind of a new player for them, but he's been really good for them. He's started a lot of games for them this season. He's been good.
Yeah.
Adam Webster, I've always liked. I think he's always
solid
been okay
defense.
For them.
And look, they're good enough to be able to play a back fucking 4.
Yeah, yeah, you're so right.
Alexis McAllister, obviously a great player. I like Pascal Gross. I think he's class. I know that they've lost, obviously, their big one in Trossard. I know someone was saying in the comments earlier that Trossard is the most overrated player. I personally disagree. I think he's a good player.
I disagree. McAllister walks into the Spurs midfield, I think.
Solly March,
Caicedo also. Caicedo is brilliant.
Great player.
He's also brilliant. He's like looking better than even Basuma was, for them. Like he's brilliant.
If Brighton had a worldly striker, if you took Mitrovic and put him in the Brighton team, or if you took Ivan Toney and put him in the Brighton team, I think that Brighton could easily be a top 4 candidate.
Yeah,
maybe.
Apart from Matoma, I would say it's pretty like Solly Marsh, but like, come on, like they had Solly Marsh like when they were playing back in like League 2 or like whatever. So I don't know. Like, I think it's more the attack where he's getting so much out of that attack. He's getting so much. He's really outperforming with the forwards that he has available to him. He's even using like that Ferguson guy. Like he's a brand new player, like, to them, like he's from the youth or I don't even know. Like he's just getting so much out of that team. So he has a better squad, I would say, Sean, than.
He's definitely, I think, I'm not sure I think he's got a better squad. He
has
better
than Palace's, I think. Is it better than Palace's?
Yeah, definitely 100% better than Palace's. I'm just not sure if it fits somewhere in here or if it can sit on top. Because I know he's getting a very good performance out of a decent squad. I'd say that Brighton squad and Wolves squad are kind of about similar. Maybe it should be like that, or maybe I think he's got a better squad than West Ham. Wouldn't you say?
It's just more the forward line. Like he would love to have Scamacca. He would love to have Jared Bowen. He would love to have, if he had Jared Bowen and Scamacca, they would be a much better team. I think it's more the forward line where like I think he has like a relegation to me.
Yeah,
he has a relegation level forward line, mid-table level defense and midfield. So it's a tough one. I think 10th is okay. That probably makes sense. Okay. Might even be harsh on him. It just looks kind of harsh when you see him at 10th because I do think the narrative is that he's really outperforming. So
for the ease of the conversation, are we talking? It's obviously that Manchester City go number 1, right?
Yeah, by far. Especially the fact that I think the most unfair thing about Man City is the fact that they have Haaland and Alvarez. Like
Yeah,
they
yeah,
signed
yeah.
like they signed a really big number 9 who's fabulous, but then they also signed like a guy who can sort of play the false 9 role like Gabriel Jesus did. Like they signed a Gabriel Jesus replacement with Alvarez, but then they also signed Holland. Like it's so unfair, so unfair. And then they signed Calvin Phillips, and now they're complaining about Calvin Phillips. Like it's I don't know, it's so ridiculous over in that team.
Yeah. Yeah, the entitlement of some of their fans as well. Newcastle United, this one's obviously going to be interesting. I want to get them up as well on here. Their squad is only valued at 442 million, right? Which, according to, I don't know if this is updated to the most recent stuff, but you got to give Eddie Howe a lot of credit. He's done a brilliant job, and that squad is valued at less than what Aston Villa's squad is valued at, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
they just recruited really well, but I do think they have a very good team. That Newcastle team, like.
let's have a look.
Nick Pope is exactly what Lloris used to be, like a world-class shot stopper. And I don't think Lloris is any more a world-class shot stopper, but
Definitely not.
Nick Pope certainly is like a world-class shot stopper. He's ridiculous. Botman, we all wanted Botman. He comes into the team. I think Dan Burn walks straight into this team. I would love to have Dan Burn.
Yeah, their back four is superb. Target's brilliant. Trippier would walk back into our team as well. Even Fabian Schär probably gets in
he does
to our squad. Yeah. Their defense is amazing. That's why I think they've only conceded 2 goals in the last 10 games or something, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you're right. So so that again, another team that walks straight in there.
But does Joe Linton get into Tottenham? I don't think so. Like he's a good player.
Bruno Guimaraes gets in. He's the best midfielder in the
in.
world, in my opinion. That's just I find him to be ridiculous. But
Callum Wilson, do you put Callum Wilson in the Tottenham squad? Callum Wilson or Richarlison? Where would you prefer Richarlison or
I'm
Wilson?
sticking with Big Rich, but Callum Wilson he's good. He's good. I do like Callum Wilson. It's just the fact that he's 30 years old, so maybe I don't know. Just one, he's not a Spurs sort of player yet.
John Joe Shelby, he's off, isn't he? He's going to Turkey, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
I think he's moving to Besiktas. There's all these memes going around saying John Joe Shelby in like 6 months' time, and he's got like a full head of hair because he's had a hair transplant in Turkey.
What's also funny though is he moved to like they have a similar like kit and everything, Besiktas, and they have similar like colors
that's right.
And everything. So
it
won't even look the same. He'll look the exact same like in Turkey.
Yeah, Philo's saying Newcastle have conceded 11 goals. Yeah, their defense. If you swap Tottenham's defense with Newcastle's defense, Tottenham suddenly are up there with the best of them.
I think even just if we had Nick Pope, we would have conceded like 6 fewer goals, 7 fewer goals this season. Like some of the goals that Hugo's let in, we all know Nick Pope would not have let those in. And their attack is also good with Isak as well. They have Alexander Isak now and players like that. So
yeah,
I actually think Eddie Howe's doing a good job, Sean. But I think sometimes his hit the job they talk about he's doing is slightly. I think he's getting a little overrated at times too. I think he has a very good team, Eddie Howe. Like he does have a very good team because like Bruno Guimaraes, players like that, and also having Alexander Isak and players like that. Like he has a good team. He has a very good team.
But how does it compare to Liverpool's? About the same?
So crazy to say theirs is. I think it's about the same, slightly worse, only slightly.
Newcastle's forward line is good. Liverpool's is very good. The midfield on both teams is pretty average, apart from Guimaraes, where he'll probably take the lead. And then defense.
Joe Linton, they would take though. They would take Joe Linton, I think, in midfield.
You could maybe make the argument then that Newcastle, because they've got a couple of players in midfield that would get into Liverpool's team. Most of the defenders in Liverpool are. I mean, Liverpool conceded top. They're top notch, but so is Newcastle. So there's not a hell of a lot to choose between the two, right? And especially on form wise, Newcastle. Phil's saying they've only conceded a couple of goals. Let me ask the guys in the comments: what do you think? Newcastle better squad than Liverpool, or Liverpool better squad than Newcastle? And I assume we're okay with saying that Wolves have got a slightly worse team than both, but worse squad than both of those. Newcastle have lost once at home since over a full calendar year ago. Jesus, they're turning into the old Chelsea.
I think were we the team that like beat them as well, like that full calendar? Because they had the takeover not long after we beat them. I remember as well. Like when we beat them at home, the takeover didn't happen much long after. So it'd be interesting.
Phil's asking, do you know which team have conceded the least amount of goals in a full season ever? I don't know. Was it Arsenal in the unbeatables? Was it? I don't know.
Maybe one of Jose's teams.
Yeah, maybe one of Jose's teams. Let us know. Let us know. Donovan is saying Liverpool are above Newcastle.
I was just
They're
looking at
close one.
Drew. I was looking at Drew's comment. Drew, you're probably right. Like, it's where my bias is. I should have caveated this whole stream and say my bias is very much coming through when it comes to my opinion of our center backs, but I can't avoid it. But you're spot on, Drew.
I think we're up next. I think we are. I think it's Tottenham next.
Okay.
We'll put them there for the time being, but I think that we might end up finding ourselves somewhere here. But we'll look at it.
I would agree with that. Jeez, the Wolves though, Sean, is a peculiar one. Like, I almost think like Wolves have.
Let's get some side by sides.
I just feel like Wolves, like with that, I would take Kilman, and I would take Collins, and I would take their wing backs, and I would take their midfield, and I would. It's just everybody, but it's just their attack. I wouldn't take. It's just I'd keep our front three of course, but with Wolves, like. I don't know. That seems crazy, though, to say that Wolves have a better squad.
Wolves. Eight Nuri's definitely better than what we have. I don't know. Apart Collins.
Kilman is the one that walks in ahead of Dyer. Collins probably walks in ahead
Sarr walks in ahead of Lloris. Midfield, Neves gets into our team. Podence would make the squad. Nunes gets in 100%. Jao, he's gone.
I think we have a better. It's just because our forward line is so much better in theirs. I think like we do have They brought in Cunha. Wow, they did bring in some players though. They brought in Cunha. They brought in Kaladzic. They have Jimenez. We have much better forwards. We have much better forwards than they do, but it's not like they have bad forwards to choose from.
For me, I think at the very least, it's got to be something like that for the time being. Would you think? Would you swap Liverpool? Would you swap Liverpool's squad for yours? You probably would, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'd take their whole defense, and I would take. You would take Salah, of course. Like he's still one of the best players in the world.
Diaz.
And you would take Diaz. I would take Jota. I love Jota. I would take Gakpo. Like I do like Gakpo.
Oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine there. He's just figuring his landing. He's just a little bit.
I don't know.
Taking a bit of time.
It's Liverpool's. It's just because their whole back four gets into ours, basically. So it's just straight in. Like they have one of the best back fours still, I think, in the league, apart from Trent.
Yeah, and there's a couple of their midfielders that get into our. Our midfield isn't spectacular, is it? Let's be honest. Jota.
I don't know. It's a weird one. They have a lot of good creative players, but they have like Thiago. Like Thiago walks into our team, but like Harvey Elliott gets into the team. But I don't know if like Curtis Jones does or like Henderson does. Like,
no,
I would rather have Højbjerg than Henderson. I would rather
if Liverpool could go and sign like a Neves from Wolves, like a world class central midfielder, defensive midfielder, they would be.
I've heard they're after Nunes. Actually, that's who they're actually after.
Nunes, sorry, not Neves. Nunes or Neves.
Yeah, they're after Nunes.
Who's the guy with the man bun?
Oh, that's Neves.
That is Neves. Oh, okay.
Right, that is confusing. It gets confusing. Neves, Nunes, and Matinho. What a combination. But I think Liverpool's is better just because, like we've said, and I know Drew is right that I've said a lot of things about the defense, but I'll be honest, like majority of the league has a better defense than ours, and I think you can't ignore that. You just can't ignore that. Like, so ours is 6th or 7th. I would say ours is 6th or 7th. Yeah, that would make sense.
And then the last two we have to look at is Arsenal and Manchester United. So let's look at Arsenal. I mean, I don't necessarily think that. I think Arsenal are playing well above their station.
But they have a great squad. I actually do think they have a great squad, or at least a brilliant starting 11. They have a brilliant starting 11. Like Saliba is one of.
This is the best midfield. This is the best midfield in the best midfield three, I think, in the Premier League. But when you go down, like you get outside their starting 11, injuries, and obviously, yes, Saliba's fantastic, Gabriel's fantastic, Zinchenko, Manchester City was silly to let go of him.
Tomiyasu, we would take.
Yeah, you take all three of those, wouldn't you? I wouldn't take Ben White. I wouldn't have Ben White.
You wouldn't have Ben White. I don't like him, but I would.
Well, I mean, ahead of Doherty or Emerson, yes, but ahead of Pedro Porro, no.
He's not really a right wing back, though. I think he is more of a center back. I think he is more of a center back, especially for back three. He'd be good.
And then Saka.
They have
It's the thing, right? If two of these get injured, it's these three create everything, right? If two of those, if Thomas Partey gets injured or goes down for his personal troubles or whatever, or Odegaard goes out, you know who they're going to step in with is Fabio Vieira
I've heard
gonna
that's
come
been
in
a
and
bit of a dud. I've heard that
yeah,
was
he's
a
been
bit
a
of a
dud so
dud.
far, right? He's not going to come in and replace Odegaard. If Xhaka gets injured, who's going to step
With
in?
Shaka, I feel like that's the one they would rather lose because maybe they could figure that out. But I think it's more like if they lose Thomas Partey or if they lose Odegaard, like that is
They're in
bad for
trouble,
them.
right?
That'll be bad for them. But
And then
they
up
have a
top,
great forward line now. I think they have really great players to pick from up there.
they still haven't got a straight up number 9 though. I like Nketiah's on a good run of form. Don't get me wrong, 6 goals in 10 games or whatever it is, but or 10 goals in 13. It's something crazy. He's an incredible start to this, like incredible run since Gabriel Jesus has been injured. But I still don't think he's nowhere near top, like a champion winning level striker. Do you think?
I think he's proving some people wrong, to be honest, Sean. Like like I said, shamelessly listened to a bit of Talk Sport, and I heard some Arsenal fans saying that he wouldn't, if they had Gabriel Jesus back right now, they would play Nketiah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because he's scoring the goals. Like Gabriel Jesus was help linking up the play, but he wasn't really scoring the goals. Whereas Nketiah has been scoring the goals since he's come in. I would say they have a third or fourth best ranked team, but the thing is that you mentioned, Sean, is that they don't really have a lot of players to take over in case one of them gets injured. So that is a big concern for them. So you have to
Slightly
caveat
weaker
that.
squad.
They don't
yeah,
have a
you
lot
might-
of depth. They have a fantastic starting 11, but they don't
Yeah.
have a lot of depth. But I would still put them in fourth just because their starting 11 is ridiculous. And they have one of the best goalkeepers in the league with Ramsdale.
He's amazing, isn't he? He's absolutely. And I've seen so many points that people are making to me on Twitter saying, if you're going to go through this rebuild, everything starts with the goalkeeper. And they're right. If we could get that guy in, if we get anyone in, to be honest, into that role before the end of the January window, it would be a massive boon. But I'm happy to wait until next summer, as long as we get somebody else in alongside Pedro Porro. Manchester United, last one's up, my man. To me, it's pretty clear they've got so much more depth than Arsenal do, but I think that their starting 11 probably isn't quite as strong as Arsenal's. So it depends on how much weighting you want to place on the kind of on the depth side of things. David De Gea is a good goalkeeper, but he's not as good as Ramsdale. Harry Maguire, obviously, you wouldn't consider him you'd consider him a squad player, but does Martinez get in ahead of Gabriel or ahead of Saliba? It's a tough one, right?
Yeah. I don't think they have a better defense than Arsenal do.
No, I don't think so either.
Maybe Varane, but I don't like Varane is like a bit injury prone at times as well, though. And he's a bit past his prime as well. And the midfield, Casemiro, it's a comparable midfield though. Eriksen, Casemiro, and Bruno Fernandes is unbelievable. Like I don't get criticism he ever gets. Like he is a top midfielder, like close to world class midfielder, at least in my opinion. I like that midfield is comparable to actually Arsenal's, I would say. Their wingers though are nowhere near as. But then the wingers, it's like Antony, I don't think is nearly, not even close. We wouldn't even hold a flame to Saka. We wouldn't even hold a flame to him.
100%.
But Rashford, on the other hand, I think I would rather have than Martinelli. I would rather have Rashford. But Martinelli is also spectacular. So they've got some options though.
Like they've got that Garnacho. Garnacho's an absolute beast that's coming up for them. Like he's such a good player, such a talented trickster.
I do think they have better forwards, Arsenal, to pick from than maybe Man United do. Actually.
More options, yeah.
They do
more options. Okay.
They have Big Weghorst now, but that's like a weird, it was a smart signing, but a weird signing.
And they're clear of so if we
I actually think Arsenal have a better squad than Man United. Yeah, I would say that.
And Man United are clear of Newcastle. Do we agree?
Oh yeah. I think there's actually a huge gap, I think, between Man United, Arsenal squad, Chelsea squad, Man City squad, and then the rest of these guys, below them. I think there's a bit of a space there.
All right. If you agree with that, Jack, I agree with it. Let me know in the comments if you agree with it. But according to what I want to do, I would love to be able to get up now a side by side of where of where they currently sit. Obviously, Arsenal have got the third best team according to us, third best squad, but are dominating the league. So, I think that you should recognise that it's harder to go from third best to first in terms of quality, maybe, than it is to go from one of these positions to jump up a little bit, because the quality is a little bit different between them. However, the takeaways from this are that Thomas Frank, Silva are absolutely killing it for their teams and are generating so much more value from very average squads than they should be. And they're future candidates, and what a wonderful season they're having. Antonio Conte, we think that Tottenham have got the 7th best squad in the Premier League, just slightly ahead of Wolves and just behind Liverpool. Let me know if you guys feel the same.
Yeah, that's the big one. It was a confusing one with us in Liverpool, because it's like you rate it, like, it's so confusing with Spurs, Sean, because like I almost look at any team in the league and it's like, yes, absolutely take prime Son, prime Kane, prime Kulusevski, and you would take all the backups that we have. Like, it feels like forward department, we've always been quite satisfied. Like, yes, little additions here and there, but always been happy. And it's just like the midfield, Højbjerg and Bentancur, like, it's not the best in the league, but it's not bad by any means either. Like, it's pretty solid and, like, a core squad. It's just, I just personally just don't rate that back line. And so it's just so confusing. It's like you have to account for there being such a huge drop off from the rest of the team, because like if Spurs had, how would I put this maybe with a conclusion? If Spurs had the back line of Brighton, even just Brighton, like if they just had a few of Brighton's players, I would probably put Spurs ahead of Newcastle. Even, or ahead of Liverpool. Like if we had Botman and Joel Matip, even, I would put us ahead of Newcastle and Liverpool. And that's all it is that's maybe why I don't know what people get criticized for saying this, but that's also sometimes, Sean, where the logic is like Conte's just 3 or 4 signings, 2 or 3 signings away from making at least the squad a top 4 looking squad, or close to a top 4 looking squad. He's 3 or 4 signings away, clearly, from making it a top 4 looking squad. But at the moment,
there's one thing for sure, though, we are punching above our weight slightly, right? We are doing better than we can. We're 3 points off of third, and yet there are 6 teams ahead of us that have got better squads, better first 11s, and better squads overall. And so
what are your takeaways, especially with Conte? Like, I know, like we always, like, I'm a bit blindly, not as critical, and I have my, bias towards him. But do you have any sort of conclusions from this? Like, when it comes to Conte, like, we all know there are things that he gets wrong, like Spence and his substitutions and like things like that are frustrating. But
I think it shows. It probably shows that, if you wanted to go down the path that I do, which is to play exciting football, right? Because I feel like in the pursuit of a trophy that you can or can't win, or you will or won't win necessarily 1 year every 5 or 1 year every 10 or whatever else, to sacrifice enjoyment of the team, watching the team play. If he was to go down that path, or if we had a manager that was to play that sort of football and we played to within ourselves, or just to the level that we are, we probably wouldn't be having the kind of the challenge of top 4 like we currently do. So for me, I think that you've got to give Antonio Conte a little bit of credit for getting blood from a stone to a degree, but I don't think he's by any means alone in that conversation. I think you have to look at, like I said before, the likes of the Fulham manager, and to see that those guys can play attractive football, and still, because Fulham play good football, Brighton play good football, as do Brentford, and yet they're getting, they're punching well above their weight. And so
it's like both arguments are kind of valid at once. It seems like it's like Conte is getting a lot out of a squad and is clearly punching a bit above his weight, but also it's not like there aren't other managers in the league who aren't punching above their weight either. And using the best of the resources they're given too. And Fulham, like you said, is like maybe the best example, I would actually say.
Fulham's a good example.
I think Fulham are just a more spectacular example, because a lot of people had them relegated like this season. Like, a lot of people thought they were
to be 15th and to be playing in 7th. And like I say, this is just our opinion, but and I guess people in the comments agreed as well. Brentford and Fulham, they're the takeaways, that you can play good if you have a manager that can get, that can find a way to get the team humming. You don't have to have £100 million players in every position to be doing well. Tottenham just need a few tweaks. If we could get, even go to Everton and get the guy Cody or whatever, or Tarkowski, like, you can go down to that level, go all the way down to 17th in the squad rankings to find a defense that is better and more capable than the one that we have. And so it just makes you think that if we got one or two signings in that department in before the end of the window, then Tottenham could have a really, really strong second half of the season. And
I think even regardless of stance on the ownership, regardless of stance on Conte or anything, Sean, I think majority of Spurs fans actually would agree with this power rankings, because I look at that and I'm like, if I asked at the average Spurs fan, like, look at all these squads, like really quickly, what would you say if you looked at this, like, ranking from 7 to 1? They might be a little confused about the Newcastle one, because you might have to explain that one, but they still would probably put Newcastle maybe ahead of Spurs, or they would put
it's the
Spurs
first time I
slightly
thought
ahead
of it, though. I wouldn't have thought Newcastle before I did this. I didn't think the Newcastle were going to be with the fifth best squad, but they are.
The
But they
point
are.
being is
On
that
reflection,
even
they
if you
are.
did put Spurs ahead of them, Spurs would still be sixth.
Yeah.
And it does make it also falls in line with how some people always say, look at what Chelsea are doing, look at what Man United are doing, look at what all these teams are doing. That is now reflected in the squad comparisons as well.
I also think that there's massive like differences, there's levels, right? Like Manchester City and Chelsea squads are clearly number one and number two at the moment because they have depth, and like obviously Manchester City are about where they could be. Maybe they could
they
be.
have the purchasing power that
They
no
have
one
the
else
purchasing
has.
power. Chelsea are well underperforming under Potter and under Tuchel this season, massively underperforming. But it's the start of a new project. We'll see how that turns out. I personally think that they could end up being the new Everton because they're betting the house in terms of how much money they're spending. And if they don't get it right, if they don't finish in the top four this season and next season, then they won't have the revenues to justify the spend. And so there could be problems for them on the FFP stuff. Arsenal and Manchester United were a close one, but I think there's a big gap between Chelsea and City. And then there's a bit of a jump down to Arsenal and United. Both of them have got very, very strong squads. Arsenal's starting 11 is better, but their squad is thinner. Manchester United is more consistent across the board.
Spot on.
And then you probably go like Newcastle, Liverpool, Tottenham, and Wolves. There's not that much separating. If Wolves just had a good striker, they'd be right up there contending.
Spot on.
And then below that, you've got West Ham, Brighton, and Leicester and Villa, probably teams that are like, you could make the argument that maybe one of them should be here or here or here, whatever. And then beneath that, I don't know. I mean, you could even make the argument that from West Ham down to Leeds, or maybe to Crystal Palace, there's kind of not a lot separating that middle pack.
There's something about how also we were not even, it wasn't that ridiculous to compare Spurs' squad to Wolves' squad. Like, we weren't reluctant to offer that comparison either. Like, we did kind of take it seriously for a moment. Like, okay, is Wolves actually maybe slightly better than ours? And I think we eventually were like, nah, Harry Kane is like a huge difference. That's for
Massive
sure.
difference.
Because they don't have a world-class player like in their team. And
but if they did, all they need, if the Wolves owners could pony up 80 million quid and go and prize Ivan Toney from Brentford, for example, Wolves would be a real threat. I just thought of this.
Like, what if they went after a guy like Saint Maximin or like something like that? Like, that's what I thought. Like, that would, like, they had Saint Maximin, Mateus Cunha or like Kaladzic, one of those two guys, like up top. And then they already have, like, I think Pedro Neto. They still have players like that. And they have other good, wingers, Podence, players like that. And then you still have Nunez and Neves. Like, that's pretty crazy. Like, that is a good team. Like, that
maybe they could have even had someone just like a target man to bounce off, like a Wout Weghorst.
They got that Kaladzic guy. Remember that guy from Stuttgart? But he's just injured, and he got injured the moment he arrived. But he's that 6'7". He's that 6'7".
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
They do have a big target man, and they got Diego Costa back. So they're going for, and they have Jimenez. So they have 3 target men who are just all injured. That's
like I say, if they can figure it out and get one or two bit more success up the top end, then Wolves are a threat. They're not far away either. Like Tottenham are 2 or 3 players away from being a real contender. Until we've had this conversation, I didn't think that Wolves were as close to us, but actually on reflection, they are, and they're only 2 or 3, close.
Makes you think of the Wolves managers that have underperformed. Then you kind of think maybe certain Wolves managers have underperformed, like Nuno, last, what was his name? Bruno Lage maybe underperformed actually a little bit when you do look at it, and they have maybe underperformed. What I would say is, though, Sean, is that, but with Spurs, if we even were given Max Kilman, if we took Max Kilman and Connor Cody, like if we just took 2 former Wolves defenders, like we would be, I think, 4th or 5th. I think we would be 4th or 5th. Like, genuinely.
We're not far away,
with Sessegnon and Emerson and players like that. But still, and also if you then added Pedro Porro, if you actually added Pedro Porro to Spurs right now, and you added Max Kilman, I would put us ahead of Liverpool.
Yeah.
I might even put us ahead of Newcastle in that case.
Yeah, I think Porro reshuffles the order a little bit in and of it himself. And if we can get a centre back in, whoever it is, before the end of the window,
we would shoot up again.
We definitely shoot up. The other takeaway, of course, is that there's competition everywhere. I'm surprised to see that West Ham's squad is only one place behind, but I do think there's a jump down between Wolves and West Ham and the people below that. So Tottenham should feel confident that we should always be at the moment, a top 8 team. There's really not that much threat coming from beneath, I don't believe. But Chelsea are a sleeping giant,
right? 2 or 3 players away is not a cliche when you look at this. It's not really that much of a cliche.
Yeah, so you can make the same argument for a couple other teams as well. So
fair.
It's very interesting, mate. Jack, I've loved going through this with you. We're on the 2-hour mark, so I will I'll round it off, buddy. But there you go, guys. That is our squad depth power rank. Let me know in the comments below, guys, if you agree or disagree. Hope you enjoyed the show. Bit of a different one. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and expect to see me doing more of these streams with Jack and a few other people as well over the coming days and weeks. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for the super chats that came in earlier to Moondog and Tottenham Hotspur till I die. Dermatron. I love you guys. We will see you tomorrow, Jack. Me and you and Dave are going to be on your channel, aren't we? We're doing the
Conte challenge. Yeah, we're
Conte challenge.
Conte challenge. Conte in, Conte out. Not even that dramatic, but we'll paint it that sort of picture. And,
clickbait. Be a good one. We'll
clickbait it that way. But everybody, I think it's going to be a good debate between Sean and Dave. Kind of just like looking at the ins and outs of Conte, maybe where he's gone wrong, but also where we should be given more respect. I'm looking forward to it.
Anything else coming up on the channel soon, Jack?
Take a look at the Danjuma thing. Like, if you haven't seen the Danjuma one, please take a look at that. And then Pedro Porro, I'll do something slightly different. It's not like who is Pedro Porro. I think we all know who Pedro Porro is by now, but just sort of like what we were just discussing earlier. Like, what's the big thing that Pedro Porro could bring to Spurs? I'm going to do a video on that too. So check it out, please.
All right, guys. Thank you everyone, for stopping in. Jack, love you, mate. I will see you tomorrow. Guys, I'll see you tomorrow on the Irish Hotspur, or tomorrow morning, actually. I'll do my Tottenham milk, of course. Like the video, share, and subscribe. See you soon, guys. As always, come on, you Spurs.
Bye.